Okay. My desktop. Okay, and then I'll get the last couple of emails. Cindy, okay, great. Reply. Okay, here is the stuff that we're going to be engaging in. Again, it's this deck. We'll also be jumping into a workshop file that I sort of put together for us to play with. Some of this may start on some post-it notes as an initial way to get it started. If you're whatever, I can even sort of align you, or you can use them in my place. I can put them up there, and we'll get going. But welcome. Let's see if we get this going. Okay. So hi, as you guys all know, I'm Chris Becker. I'm excited to be here. I am, this is a workshop on essentially using collaborative design, collaborative UX, and using some generative AI tools to improve our ability to sort of collaborate. The role of this stuff is sort of ingrained in what we do, but we also have to play with new tools all the time. And some of this may be ways at which to take some of these workshops or outputs like back to your teams, sort of explore what that equals, get our hands in these tools a little bit. There's a couple of sort of activities that are in there that are relevant to this stuff. And it'll be quite fun. It's essentially split into 3 short little exercises. A short one that sort of lets us play with interaction design is going to be generally using some post-it notes. And then we'll do a quick little proto-persona using the ICF framework, which if you don't know that, it's fine. Sort of show you what that is. And we will then use generative AI to sort of produce a person in 20 minutes or whatever that is. That's for you. All of these exercises are meant to be quick, sort of as a way to sort of practice, but also time boxing the relationship, especially with using generative AI, is like my top sort of recommendation. Like, don't get lost in it. Use it for a small amount of time. If it gets you what you want it to be, great. If it doesn't, move on to another thing, or use your own brain, or draw with your own hand, or whatever that is. That's it. Yes, I mean, at some level, a lot, it's true. I mean, a lot of people are like, I just don't want to use my brain at all, and I'll just ChatGPT or whatever. Let's use that. And then the last one will be sort of taking our proto-persona into a UX scenario, aligning that, and then having some QA. This is not the me show. Please, if you have a question, raise your hand. It's meant to be interactive. There's some outputs that we're going to be doing here, and I'll ask some questions just to get us all sort of acquainted and get things going. Did everybody get in? Everybody got some links? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. One more. What was your? I didn't. It's crbecker1@gmail, and I'll sort of go there. You missed the one. Yeah, that's. There was too many Beckers, and I tried to be the first, but. now you've got it. Okay. Refresh. Do it. Okay. Yes, you're welcome. Here are some access points to this stuff. Okay. So as I was saying, split into sort of 3 parts. I'll keep time. We may not use all of it necessarily, but this will be sort of fun. We'll get into it. Okay. So if you have not used any of these tools before, Visual Electric or Reclaim.ai, just go make an account. They give you a certain number of these things free, which is also sort of a good sort of initial, I like to call it, like it's like a good drug dealer gives you like the freeness first, and then you sort of get hooked on it, and then you'll use it forever. And then there's that opportunity at which also these tools, there's many of them. So I wouldn't say these are the only 2 to use, but I've found these ones to be quite relevant, especially Visual Electric. It allows you to even do some drawing and then translate that into sort of using visual, not just prompting as its sort of core output. So about myself, I'm currently a professor at the Art Center College of Design and Otis College of Design in Los Angeles, California. And my background is in graphic design. I've been a user experience designer for years, mostly in the sort of realm of interaction design and teaching in the space of like making web stuff, essentially, right? We all sort of make things for the web, which is there. But I've also sort of led some boot camps, I mentor with Design Lab, and I've written a couple of books, one that was sort of released last May. And so all that to be said is I like sort of playing with this stuff. I like teaching in the realm of doing that. Hopefully you guys will find this exercise quite fun. And I teach mostly to undergrads trying to learn about and they are bringing new tools to us all the time. So it's just sort of like, I always am teaching as a way to sort of keep sharp. Like you have to sort of, you can't be like, oh yeah, well I'm using, Adobe 1 from like 8 years ago or whatever that is. Now, again, here's the books I've written. I write on Medium. I mentor through some other things, and I've been involved in and out of UXPA with some other stuff for a few years now. So, as I said, I teach human-centered systems, and I've also written some courses on accessibility and stuff like that. So let's talk a little about collaborative design and UX and generally how sort of generative AI can sort of align with that stuff. We'll do a little bit of an icebreaker just to get a sense of what we're here. Again, we're all here for a couple of hours, so let's do that. So let's do a little bit of audience participation. This isn't going to be like pulling teeth. We're just going to sort of go around and introduce ourselves generally. And I just am curious about what your role is. So I'll start over here. Your name and your role, since we have small.
I'm Jack. I am I guess you call UX designy consultancy person.
Okay, UX design. Okay, in that realm. So still a UX designer, or you sort of drifted into a new role?
Yeah, I don't. No, I just like design. That's it.
That's it. Great.
I don't know about the title.
Okay. I think we all know that the titles are all sort of like being thrown up in the air, and there's all these people writing ridiculous articles about how UX is dead and things like that, which I always find sort of fascinating, and also like
dead for the last 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know if it ever existed really. That's yeah, exactly. So great to meet you. It's nice to hear you here. And we'll just go back here.
I'm a UX project designer.
Okay.
I'm working in a company in the marketplace.
In the marketplace. Cool.
Sorry, hi, I'm Edgar. I'm UX designer. I'm working for HSBC Bank, working for the surveillance department. We are going to build a platform that analyzes trades and the communication flow between the employees within inside the bank and outside. More or less, that's all.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Elsa. I do mostly web design and UI and some.
Great. Welcome. Welcome up here.
Hey, I'm Vera. I'm the lead UX researcher.
Research, great.
Carolina, originally from Poland.
Okay.
And associate researcher doing some academic UX research, comparing interfaces for different countries, different cultures, but also entrepreneur.
Okay.
UX research for my own company.
Your own company. Awesome. Welcome.
Amelia, I do both UX research and design. I'm originally from the US, but I live in Madrid.
Madrid. Awesome.
And I'm Pavel. I'm from Poland, and I'm working for a software company in the US, and also as a UX designer, and also as a UX designer for the Polish insurance company.
Okay.
With internal systems.
Mostly, yeah. Great. It spans the gamut, right? Like from consulting to research to outputs. Like, and we also sort of know like where we fit, where we do things is very different. I'm like, it doesn't really matter like where you work. It's all somewhat of the same sort of stuff to some extent. And the titles and those things are becoming less and less relevant because we move into systems, we understand how to solve problems. And I always sort of bucked at the idea of like being sort of like, oh, you like the wireframes, or you're a UX designer. Like what? No, like that's silly or whatever that is. Now, many of you work on teams, right? And you work just by yourself, or you work on a team? I'm just curious. You could just sort of do it quickly. Like, what is your team's size?
It depends on how all teams, because you have your direct colleagues,
Sure,
which are part of the UX research, but we often work, at least for my case, as UX researcher, I work always with designers, PMs, sales, marketing, so the team size may depend.
Yeah, you may have a department, and then you may have like who you directly support, right? Like, what is your when you're supporting as a researcher, what is your typical size of your product team or something like that?
I would say around 10.
Around 10.
Stakeholders, yeah.
Okay, great. 10 stakeholders. Anybody else? You were advocating?
Around 20.
Around 20. Okay, great.
It depends on who I'm working with.
Yeah, sure.
Unfortunately, like sometimes it's like a founder and that's it, and other times it's like many people.
Yes. Many people. A lot of times we're supporting a product team, right? It's like, oh, you may be the only UX designer, but there may be like 7 developers or 10 or whatever. There's some of a ratio that you sort of are relatively supporting at some level. But there's this opportunity that like we all know that the work that we do is not a one-person game, right? We fundamentally have to fold into teams, do research to sort of support either stakeholders or other designers we're working with or the outputs. And fundamentally, that requires us to help, right? We want to get into those spaces. We want to collaborate with those people. And some of them know what we're doing, right? Hey, we need to talk about our end user. They're like, yeah, I know who that person is. I've done some research on them and I know what that means. And other times you're like, I don't know who we're solving for. And you're like, oh, okay. Now I know where I can sort of support in that realm, right? In what that equals. And a lot of this space of the teams that we support scales differently, right? Whether that's a day-to-day meeting of Scrum or stand-up, and other times that's sort of opposite. Now, if you're not familiar with who Henry Dreyfuss is, he's sort of a famous American product designer, but I sort of like all these older designers have sort of encapsulated what design equals, like which way they read it. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could get into canon quotes, but like, I'm just not gonna be able to do that. But design process is intimate between engineers, designers, and clients. Like, this is still ends up true for a lot of what we do, whether you're working with banking clients or you have stuff within research that you're working on, or you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to figure out the things you're doing, or whatever you're consulting in, right? Understanding the factors are really important for getting people to do stuff, but also engaging in that process. And we all know collaboration works differently at different organizations. Sometimes the hierarchy of the organization, if it's a bank or whether it's the size, like it's very hard to get 100 people to sort of work together on a single entity, but there's ways to do it. But the way the tools sort of ingrained with that sort of matter. And part of that starts with, well, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Is it research that you're trying to do? Well, where is the research endpoint? Like, what is it trying to get to? Who are you trying to influence with the knowledge that you've gained, or what that's sort of equaling? Who is the decision maker that you're trying to sort of get them to tell a story to, or whatever that is that's applying. Now, the role of collaboration in this is design can sort of spiral in and figure out a way to say, well, oh, it could be helpful in this workshop, or it could be helpful in defining the problem more equally, or it could be helpful in helping our audience know that we haven't really understood the user needs sort of accurately, or whatever that is, right? And our job is sometimes to say, well, where could that be? Where could I move that? Where could I sort of ingrain that piece? And part of even what I'll show you today is some tools to say, well, if I'm working with a team, we need to play with these things, or we need to think differently and maybe faster. Here are some ways to use some of these tools like generative AI to sort of engage that. Now, part of the thing that's really difficult about collaboration is, one, you gotta get people out of their desk or out of their process, or sometimes it requires a designer to shake up the process. Like, everyone is sort of just like remotely like walking through things. Like, everyone missed all of the stuff that's happening over there, right? Some of us in the consulting world have sort of experienced this, like, all you got to do is just like look under the carpet, and everyone else is like not looking over there. Like, well, look, we looked over there and you guys didn't. So that's where the problem was existing, or whatever that is. Now, that takes work, right? The rules of these things I sort of find fascinating is that if you get into the work, you can then find a ways in which you can tweak where the tools and things that you can do are meaningful for the teams that you're working with. Does that make sense? And if you've sort of experienced that generally, like, my company sort of knows what you're doing, but I've really, like, I glommed on over here. Now they're like, man, it's a mess over there. Now I'm like in back-end tools, or like they made a set of requirements without talking to anyone. Like, who wrote these? Did they know that this is sort of missing? Did they even read it? Yeah. I once worked on a education platform, and I was reading requirements docs, and I'm like, this is they're requiring something that's impossible to do. They wanted iPads to communicate internally without access to Wi-Fi. And I was like, do they know that that's not how it works? And like, I would like redline and send it back to them, and like, this is education class, this big company in America called Pearson. And we were like, you can't do that. It doesn't work. That's like, whoever wrote these requirements doesn't understand fundamentally the technology. And they like got all mad at us. Like, but it has to work this way. We're like, you gotta go talk to, you gotta go talk to Apple then. Like, if you're gonna go buy 2 million iPads for this thing, well, maybe they would consider changing their like core architecture, but likely not. Let's just figure out different ways to do that. So the role of these things that sort of goes into it is it's not just collaborating about the endpoint, the software, the piece of thing that's there, but it's also this whole mess of this process you're in. Now, the opportunity there in sort of aligning and bringing people together to work on stuff is sometimes in that, like, if you make the work a little bit fun, people are more aligning to what they might want to see, right? Like, most people are like, oh, I didn't read that requirements document because it was boring, it's really long, and I didn't like it. So I just cherry picked, or or even worse, we have people just like, I plugged it into ChatGPT and it told me to do these 3 things. And you're like, that was like half of what was in that document. Like, did you read it? And like, no. I've worked on research projects where I'm like, this is a 400-page deck that goes through an exec that throws it on the ground. Like, oh, like there's no way they're reading that. They're just not. Like, and they want the executive list, and then you're like, oh, well, how are we going to cherry pick all this stuff that it was sort of relevant in this that we need to build? Now, conceptual relationships, the storytelling, using some of these tools to get people excited about what they're looking at is also an opportunity that we can use in building this stuff. Now, I was talking to a room of designers, so this may be true for many of you, but I'm just sort of going to ask it. How many of you like to think visually, or like draw, sketch? There's a hand. Great. Yeah. Sometimes that's actually the big value we bring to the room. Right? It's like, oh, the whiteboard doesn't scare you. Like, you're having like, no, what if it's like this? Or how does it work? Like the visual thinking of how this stuff is translated is sometimes, in my case, was half the reason I got into it. I'm like, oh, I can draw for a living and not be an artist? Like, this is gonna be awesome, right? And that has sort of translated into a lot of things that I've even doing relative to teaching. Have you ever played the game Exquisite Corpse, or know of Exquisite Corpse? You're shaking your head. You've played this with colleagues or with your friends or stuff. Okay. I play this with my 5-year-old who's actually here with us, and also like I had a 40-year-old birthday, and we like all my nerd friends came over and we like played this in the afternoon. Now the point is that it's a collaborative drawing game, right? Somebody draws the head, you fold it over, you don't know what it's there. Somebody draws the body, you fold it over, and then somebody draws the feet, and then when you unravel it, it sort of is this collective idea of what is you're sort of building. Now, part of collaboration is sometimes that I made something, I had to hand it off to the engineer. I made something, I had to hand it to the PM to make sure that it answered the requirements deck. I made something and had to go, like, it's not that uncommon. We don't all get to work on things all at once, all on top of themselves. That's how your teams work. Kind of problematic, right? It's too much toe stepping. You have to make something, bring it to the team to collaborate on it, or come back and do that. And that's an opportunity. And I like this quote from Le Corbusier. I prefer drawing to talking. There's less room for lies, right? And there is a lot to be said about thinking visually and communicating an idea that doesn't require just you to talk about it, or just to pitch it, or just to share it that way. And I think drawing or figuring things out on a piece of paper is really sometimes some of the fastest way to do that. And ideally, some of these tools that we're going to be using is that you can still do the lo-fi on your piece of paper, and then the AI helps you render the world in a more sort of fast way. Now, drawing is thinking, right? And I know this may sound like, oh, of course it is, Chris. Like, we're all used to this stuff. But there's this translation that I think is everyone's sort of interested in the endpoint, right? What is the solution? Show me the fancy thing show me the software that people use. And that's great. But there's also a lot that's sort of gone into failed mistakes, quick ideas that you didn't make, a path that had many options that resulted in one outcome. The paths sometimes have to be figured out through lots of thinking, right? And the faster you can do some of that thinking, that can then translate into having more confidence in the path that you made on, resulting in an output. And a lot of times we even work with people who feel uncomfortable with the idea of drawing, right? You're like, oh, because they think that drawing equals rendering the world. They're like, I have to draw that accurately. I have to make someone's face look exactly like their face. You're like, well, no, you actually don't. Because there's a ton that can be done on the speed of a pencil sketch or a stick figure or outputs that is there in the way at which to communicate an idea, right? And the role of starting on this end, is actually helpful for speed, but it's also speed can then be augmented and be increased through the role of either our other conceptual skills, but also the generative AI tools that we're going to sort of play with today. Now, the role of conceptual skills is generally what designers bring to the table at any organization they work at, right? Like we've learned the ways at which to tell story. We know how to manipulate things with form and function. Some of us have graphic design skills, so we know why typography and hierarchy and why empathy matters, right? These are all things that we all know that we can do. Did any of you like list your conceptual skills on your resume? No, right? Because it's the undercurrent. It's the stuff that we sort of are expected to be able to do. But we all have different sets of skills, right? And there's this opportunity which say, look, well, where are the things that I do well that can align? Like I can read, but I'm actually quite a slow reader. And now I sort of laugh at my mother was laughing at me the other day because I've written 2 books and I couldn't have even finished a book when I was a kid. And she had to send me to a tutor. I'm sending my book to my tutor. That lady was so mean to me. And now it's like an opportunity to sort of there's lots of paths, right? There's lots of ways to the endpoint that you're looking for. But there's a role which is like planning, storytelling, getting your people to understand why this stuff is meaningful. It has huge implications. And a lot of what we do in UX is sometimes not the sexy outcome. It's like I've seen a really beautiful, tabular data that a UX designer really gave a shit about. That's like, man, without that person, this would be a mess, right? Like this is done well because the spreadsheet was meaningful to the team that we did, and somebody thought about the way the spreadsheet should be reviewed and looked at and sort of engaged in, and that's just as much design as the software that has a beautiful button or that solves your problem the way that you need. Now, the role of conceptual skills sort of aligns generally to what we're doing, but it's also sort of leaned on in the realm of generative AI. And we can then sketch and tell a story, move things through the system quickly because we have the speed at which we can make stuff, but we also have the ability to sort of process that and tell stories about it. And I'm always advocating to students and everybody else is that don't shove that stuff under the carpet. Like that actually is the key, sort of kernel of where the idea went and where that stuff should be translated. So align that, again, bring the messy part into your process. If you bring that into work stops and showing people that it's there, a lot of times you can skip sometimes steps, right? It's like, oh yeah, the sketch is enough for the developers to solve that problem. Like it doesn't need, wireframes and high-end design with design systems as well. There's a lot of things that you can do that don't require all of the sort of arduous process. Now we know the arduous process at some places are incredibly important, but don't make sure to also just hide that stuff in the work that you make. So we're going to do one to practice this really quickly. I'm going to share some Post-it notes. Just take a couple. You're going to need 1 or 2. Yeah, just take a couple and share them around. Ask some questions. This is sort of just an icebreaker. And we're going to draw something really quickly, and then we're going to put it into generative AI to sort of practice, right? This is a sort of icebreaker. So I have shared this Figjam page. And I'm just going to show you generally what we're going to do, and then we're going to sort of go about doing it. I'm going to put a time box on it, and then we're going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw quickly on a Post-it note, right? And what we're going to draw is a concept of a house in space. It's a house in space. Any kind of dwelling, whatever you want, in space. Does that make sense? Okay. And what you're going to do, so I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and I'll put a timer on here to do this. Oh, yes, absolutely. Here's some pens. These are better. These are better for sketching. Yeah, please. Oh, you can distribute. Great. Pens, pencil, whatever it is. Okay, you're going to draw a house in space. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to do it. I may cut you off even a little fast. I'm just looking at the time. Oh, we're good. Okay. And then once you get that done, what I want you to do is take a photo of it and put it into Figjam. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me just grab over here and grab you a timer. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. I'm gonna make it even faster. I'm gonna give you 3 minutes, and then I'll see if you guys need any more time. Oh, is that one? That one died. Okay, 3 minutes. Draw a house in space.
I just need to have a draft because I'm not native English speaker. Space, you mean that above Earth, above the atmosphere?
Yes.
Somewhere.
Yes, out of the atmosphere. Yes, in the universe. Space. Yes. Not just a house on the planet. But I suppose that would still answer the.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna sketch here because. Or wait, I'll just do it. And if you don't mind, I'm just gonna take some photos just for my. Action, my own action, some action shots. Action shot. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, if you're in the, and then just place your sketch in there. I'm gonna do the same. And I need to go to my email to do that. Subject. Me. Attach the file. Goodness.
What's the link to the Figjam?
Oh, the Figjam is in, was it not in your email?
Oh,
It was the second link in that
Yeah.
email. Oh, it's fine. That's fair. I already forgot it. Did you not receive the email? You need that. I'll do that. Airdrop this
Something out of the feature file
in Figjam.
from phone.
Ooh, from the phone. That is a that's outside of my you can comment, but you can't add. If you need me to add your photo, I can add it, and you can email it to me. I can toss it in there. That works. Okay. Once you get it in there, it's just an image, but grab a Post-it note and make sure that you have this little button of your name. If you have an anonymous name, but you just add it here. So like UXPA. House, a space house.
But you want a name for the house.
Yeah, I added a name for the house, and then and what we're going to do is give a really short description. Just we'll be prompting this later, so just adding of like, it is a I'm calling this an Amsterdam sort of flat on a meteorite. Okay, and I even spelled that wrong. Meteorite. Okay.
Right, below this post, there's a description of the house, or just whose house is?
Yeah, a short description of what is in this is in the drawing. So if you have a house floating over a moon, or whatever that little description is, that would be good. So I had made a Amsterdam flat on a meteorite. That was my short sketch. And then there's some. Ooh, I like this one. It's got rocket wings. Okay. My house in space. Sometimes there's a they can be. Oh, you go. Okay, great. I will. Okay. Saving the gems. I'm just gonna throw this in there. Oops. This is the teaching workshop. I'll just put it in here. And once I put it in there, I think you can have a description, but I can also describe it for you if that's helpful.
I sent you mine as well.
Okay, great. Yes, yeah, and that's fine. I should have sent a note. We'll get where we get, right? It's fine. Okay. Good. I can download this as well. Downloads. Okay, here's your silly little house in space. All right. If you want to email me a short description, I can add that in here as well, but I'll just label yours for now. Right. Okay. As I said, if you have some other ones that are here, we can do that workshop. And this one I can download as well. Okay. Yeah, everyone's imagination is different, and what a house in space looks like. Yeah, welcome. Well, that's what's making it fun. Okay, there's an alien house in space. Okay. So we all have a quick little sketch in space. Yeah, got a little description. So any of you like, this is the best space and house space I've ever witnessed in my life, right? No. No, of course not. Now, the reason that they aren't good is because I gave you how much time to draw them? Like 2 minutes, right?
I believe in my project.
You believe in your project? Yes. Okay, great. That's even better, right? Now we have these ideas. This one is oh, anonymous sticker. Can you this is yours, right? Carolina's house in space. Okay, great. The 3D build. Now the reason that these things are here, they could be a little short description. I'm just gonna read yours because it's here. That's the first one. I saw some wings on it and some rockets, some. Okay.
I'm validated by that.
You're validated by this. It's very house-esque, right? Yeah, and it's got some wings, some rocket lines, and some really skinny legs to sort of be landed on, and there's some stars in the background, so we sort of get a sense of that. Good. I made a Amsterdam flat because I've been walking around Amsterdam with my family, and this is sort of steep little roofs, and we were looking at places from 1682 or whatever old these places are, much older than where I am in Los Angeles, where everything was built in 1965 or something. But good. Okay, here's another house floating above the earth. It's very, very literal. Like it is in space. Look, the earth is there. We know that it's in space. Yes? Okay, good. A little script. A flying house with planets and the owner of the house above. Okay, there's a TV floating out there for some reason, which is great. Here's another house. There's some green grass. There's a rocket in the background. Space. Good. A house disconnected, floating from out in space. Good. Ooh, this one's a little weird. I kind of like it.
Floating bubble platform, and there are those windows.
Little windows. Yep. The house is there floating. Oh, thank you. I mean, yeah, that was great. And then we have an alien house, which again, aliens float in houses. This, yeah, that's in the realm of the possibility what we're doing. Good. Okay, now house. There's some things here. We got this. Like again, if you're sort of giggling or you're like, this is a thing that's not that great. What is it? That's the whole point, right? And the short time frame in which to do it aligns on this idea of like what it equals, right? So now what we're gonna go do, if you don't have a computer, it's a little bit harder to do this, but we're gonna sort of go into Visual Electric, and we're going to if you like, this was a version draft 1. Like, you know what? My house needs a couple more windows and maybe some more rocket lines, maybe some more rocket outputs. And we're gonna re-render this idea in Visual Electric. Does that make sense? Okay. You're newer to Visual Electric. Sort of show you this as we go. It's harder without a laptop, as we will be using a web-based tool to do that. So you can sort of, if you log into Visual Electric, the way that it works is you can redraw your outputs, and this, if you don't have a canvas yet, you can sort of create a canvas. You can say I've sort of done this workshop with a couple other people, but essentially you create a new canvas. In your canvas, you have, if you're new to it, they'll give you a couple free volts, which is what their sort of currency is. All these AI tools have a different branded currency, which is, I find a little annoying. Yeah, it's whatever. I don't work on their tools, so it's there. But essentially what you can do is I can come up here and I can grab the sketch tool, and then you can redraw or recapture your drawing. So if it's close, yes. You could also drag that photo into this outputs. The opportunity to sketch here is that you could also improve it. You could drag your drawing in there and redraw it if you wanted, but the idea is I made version 1. It was good on a Post-it note. We did it pretty fast. If you wanted to make any change, if you think your drawing on your Post-it note you're proud of that project, stick with it. You can also drop a photo in there and it'll use that as well. So that's fine. The role of this that's relatively different is the image will go through some processing and it'll try and figure out what's in there, and then you can actually adjust the description of that. Yes.
Another question. So shall we also add a description that might, let's say?
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. So, and we'll be able to modify the description a little bit as well, but it's at least a starting place, right? Our initial starting place of a house in space, mine was an output that's there. When you drop it into Visual Electric, there's an opportunity to sort of say, is that enough description? Is that enough information? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to give us a short little timer on this as well.
Okay.
I'm going to give us twice the time for generative AI. I'm going to give us 10 minutes to do this.
It feels harder than doing it.
This feels harder than doing it with a pen? Because you're having to use your mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm gonna drop my drawing into this because that's my prerogative. Where did that draw? Oh, it's in my teaching workshops.
And if you dropped all of them, would it treat it separately? Or can you combine it into one super sketch?
No, there may be tools that can do combining, but every image it drops in there, it'll sort of like run some processing on and do that. And mine was in my images, which is weird. Oops. Okay. So back in here. Drop that in there. Oops.
What exactly are we supposed to do?
So you're recreating your drawing in Visual Electric, and then you're going to describe it at the base, and then render an image of that, of what your house and space looked like. Does this make sense? Okay. I'm not sure why that's not dropping that in there, but I'm just going to redraw mine because oh, there it goes. So you can see here, as I drop the image in there, it runs some processing on it. And it says a simple hand-drawn illustration of a castle and a pink sticky note, right? So if you wanted to then describe this differently or redraw it, that's your opportunity to do that. But you can then render a new image based on this output. Now I'm going to redraw mine just because I think this drawing again is sort of helpful. Yes, there's a hand up over there.
Sorry, on description, this picture, where you are actually, where is?
So when the image gets in here, it drops a prompt that it sort of grabbed, right?
So then here we can actually.
And if you want to then render your own image, this box down here at the bottom, this is where you can add your own description of a prompt to render that image as you need. Does that make sense?
Option, choose option. Okay, you got it.
Yes. So if you click on it, here I dragged an image in here and it sort of ran some processing on it in the corner to sort of describe it. I'm going to redraw mine just because I kind of want to sketch a little bit more. So I have like, I need a more craggly rock. And I need some zoom lines. Yes. What was that? Oh, you could also run it through chat. There's lots of places to run this through. We're gonna run it through Visual Electric, just as a way to try it. But yeah, you could also run your render through ChatGPT. You could run it through Visual Electric. You could run it or through Midjourney, like this, or even Replay. We're just practicing with this one, which is fine. If you got some renders going, take a screenshot of your image, your outputs, plus your prompt, and put it in the Figjam page. Yes. Okay. So you're ahead of us, but I'm gonna redraw my my house that is sort of has the
Yeah.
like my first drawing may have been actually better.
Experience is very different with the texture pad.
Oh yeah. Sketching on a sketch pad versus using a piece of paper is radically different. Now, part of me is a little excited potentially for like maybe a pad, like you could render on your whatever, even an iPad or something and the AI is maybe fast enough as you draw, but that's a way far future off. But essentially there's maybe an opportunity to do this. Now for us, there's sort of adding some more details, sort of do some things. I think there was some signage that I had in here. And now I can describe this thing. Again, here as the drawing, if you feel better about your drawing or not, but you can grab your assets. And then down here, you can add a description. Now in Visual Electric, there's lots of options. And you can render this thing in lots of different ways. But essentially, you can come in here, you can tell it what output to use. You can give an aspect ratio. I'm going to make mine 3:4. And then I'm going to describe this, which is a meteorite. Floating in space. You thought it was a cookie, see? Yeah, there you go. Now cookie or asteroid, right? Cookie or meteorite. What is it? You sort of aligned to that. And I got to spell this right. With a Amsterdam apartment complex. You could also in prompting, you have to be descriptive. So your drawing, right? It's sort of there. It's like it's a house with wings, with rockets on the side, with tiny little lakes. Like in the background is the Milky Way. Like you have to tell it what's in the drawing to some extent. And your rendering on a piece of paper or on a Post-it note may not have that. But this is where our ability to draw really quickly and then add more to the idea of what is there allows ChatGPT or Visual Electric or any of these sort of tools to do this for us quickly, which is part of the sort of rendering speed and the opportunity for this. So, and sometimes it gets it close, and other times it gets it way off, and that's sometimes the magic point, which like, okay, render me some stuff. Like, was my description any good? And you're like, oh, it's kind of crappy, but it is what it is. Okay, so I got the Milky Way. It's in the background, and I'm also gonna have with a moon back there with a half moon. Half moon. Okay, so here's my little description. I'm going to render this now based on my prompt. Oh, beep, bop, boop, boop. Sorry, this is exciting. What is it going to make? What is it going to do? The speed at which it does this stuff is also sort of fascinating. Okay. I'll let that render, and then I'll come back over here to our Visual Electric, to our workshops page. Okay. So once you get your drawings, if you've rendered some stuff, so we're already started seeing some sort of posting in here. Here is a house with some things in space. Ooh, this is kind of weird. Oh, I like that it took this house and it made it like a 3D, like quarter turned your house. These were done in Visual Electric, or did you use ChatGPT or one of those others? I'm just curious. Here's. I'll let this render for a second. Now, as I was saying, Visual Electric is one of many. You can also take your rendering prompts and sort of move it in between. And if you're really getting into this stuff, sometimes it's actually helpful to, and you have access to them. It's like, here's what I made out of Visual Electric, and it was okay. I took the same prompt and I put it into ChatGPT, and this is what I got. And then I put this one into Midjourney. Midjourney, ChatGPT are prompt only outputs. What I sort of like about Visual Electric is that it can sort of take your drawing as a sort of compositional starting place versus just a prompt. And the prompt sometimes leaves a lot up to the sort of composition relationships. And sometimes you're doing rendering, you're trying to do something with speed, not the end of the world, right? Like I just got it in there. It gave me back a feedback loop. And now I sort of can quickly talk about this house in space versus my 2-minute drawing, right? Or, ooh, look at this one. Yeah, look, see, like a British household. Like it feels like it's like this was in you know, the galaxy, whatever, the writing the galaxy stuff. I like your little feet. I like it got the feet here. This is all,
Yeah, it did better than I imagined.
it did better than you imagined, right?
It's better than I thought.
But like it's sort of like your drawing, right? You're like, well, I mean, you're never really going to be exact, right? But the opportunity here, even for something as sort of low barrier stakes as a house in space,
Yeah,
right? It's not, and what is even here that I find relevant is that getting people into using this stuff sometimes depressurizing the opportunity. Like, it's not about making the perfect application. It's like, no, let's just have fun with it. Everyone's got to play with it a little bit. And now we can have a discussion about what was the gap that it covered, right? You have this drawing of your house with wings on it. And you can sort of see, like, it didn't really give you that good of wings.
But I like the fact it didn't have the wings.
Oh.
I left it. I was like, should I give it more wings? I was like, no, actually, I don't know that I want the wings.
And you didn't actually ask for wings. You just said jet powered with thrusters, right? So there's also this like, well, what is in the drawing? What is needs to be described in the drawing? How does that sort of translate into that? Right, it's quite
And that
fascinating.
was my advice, right? I was thinking like, well, I'm gonna have jet thrusters, and surely I must have wings. And I was being like, didn't make that same.
Didn't make that same connection. Oh yeah, look here, grabbed like a bunch of Amsterdam based. I'm gonna grab mine and put it in here. With my prompt.
This house actually. Yeah, it's your house.
This is my house.
I have heard about the background. Have you added information related to the background? What should be the background?
Yes, I told it like in the background, make the Milky Way with a half moon, right? So if you don't tell it, so there's things that it won't, or it makes it up for you. It's like it needs a background and it's sort of talking about space.
Yeah.
So sometimes it'll put things back there. But if you wanted to have specific things, which we didn't put in our drawing, right? It didn't have it here, but you're like, oh, now I can sort of work. And even in prompting, you sort of work front to back. Like, tell me what's in the foreground, tell me what's in the midground, tell me what's in the background.
Yeah.
That's even more like sort of sophisticated prompting. But the role here that's sort of fascinating is that like, you know, if I only gave one drawing of a building, but it gave me like where we are, right? It's like a lot of Amsterdam, and it somehow like turned a corner for some reason. Like this is like the Earth got exploded, and this was the only little spot of the world that sort of ended out in space, which is also quite fascinating. Oh yeah. Like I didn't draw a tree, but it's like it's got it took a whole city block in Amsterdam and just like placed it on a weird meteorite, right? Now I didn't know this is what it was going to produce necessarily, but it is close to my description. It's sort of fascinating in a way to do this, and it done in 8 minutes, right? Now with a team, part of this idea is like, well, what are we trying to solve? Like, how does it get to that place? Now, tools like this with a quick little drawing, there's a lot of pressure taken off of your sort of rendering ability by saying, well, you don't have to be able to render this well. Put it in here, describe it into the AI, and that may get us closer, right? And we've all worked with clients who are like, I don't know what I want to solve. You're like, well, can you tell me a little? Like we're always like pulling out of them the description of like, and in some cases we don't want to do that too much because it's very slow, right? It's like, or the worst client is I'll know it when I see it. I'm like, no, you won't. And I will do this endlessly, and we were going to be led in this loop. So let's define the problem. Let's get really descriptive about that. Yes.
And if you have, for example, a design system, do you know which tool can we use
to render pieces of your design system? I mean, that's coming soon.
Okay.
Maybe not with this, but there could be opportunities at which to say, well, where are we solving that, right? And lots of times we get into like the pieces, right? I have all the pieces already, and so I want to make a new button. Like, well, is that really what you need? And that might be, but the role of sort of translating that, and again, a simple tool like this, more for storytelling and setting up a problem, and even for a workshop like this, like we need to get you out of like you're too close to your design system. We need to get out and talk about where this is going to be used in the world. How is that interface that you're going to be using aligned to an output? And this is what generally we're going to be doing in the next sort of pieces. We'll align to a user, bake it out into a storytelling piece to use these tools to sort of align and help us tell stories better. Now, telling a story about a quick little sketch, low-hanging fruit. And if you love this, if you were like, yeah, it's going on my portfolio. Amazing. This is going on the front page. I'm going to show people how I built this thing. Likely not, but maybe, right? But a short amount of time. And where I found this stuff to be quite helpful, even short little examples like this. And let me just toss that one in our examples. There's another one over here. Screenshots. Where are those things? Sorry. Screenshots are here. Screenshots. Here we go. Okay. And I'll put it underneath my outputs. Ooh, this is like, I like that it did a even nicer drawing of your thing. It took yours and just like made it, it rendered it nicer. Like I had a pencil sketch and I just needed that to look nicer. And AI did that for me in a much cleaner way, right? Like, so the gap it's actually covering is not that it's sort of rendering a visual world, but it's saying like, I don't know, this needs to look nicer. You're like, well, let's take exactly what's there and just clean it up. Like relatively quickly, you can even do things like that, right? And it gets closer to what your output is. Now, sometimes the gap that it's covering is quite large, right? I made a crappy little sketch and I needed to have a city block of the city on there, but at least the idea was able to get across. And then you can render the world through an AI, which is the opportunity space that's there. Does that make sense? Okay. So look, now let's just go in here. What's good about Figjam as well is you can sort of give some validation. And you can come in here and you can give people some thumbs up. So I think this is actually what helped Figjam sort of win in the world of like sort of whiteboarding things, is that they didn't ignore the fun, and they know that like design teams, sometimes that's what we do, is we like, this is going to be a dry as hell boring meeting, and I sort of brought something that made us like sort of engage, lean forward, like touch on stuff, and you can be like, this is the one I like. That's the one, right? Now it does produce lots of options and relatively fast, and the role at which AI and generative AI generally is sort of being used even more is that it can create a lot of noise, but that's where the team and who you're working with can be helpful in saying like, we have all these options, we render them really quickly. Now I need the brain, the hive mind, the people that are in the room to sort of help align a focus or say, this is the one that's closer. We're going to choose that one and we're going to move forward with it. Does that make sense? That's a lot of times what we're doing in our jobs anyways, especially when we talk about personas or problems that are here, new componentry that needs to get made in our design system, et cetera, et cetera. So, okay. Any questions? Just come in here, leave some comments, give a thumbs up. Oh, this one is modern. I don't know what that thing is, but it's weird. Is it a chicken?
Yeah,
I didn't prompt it. You didn't prompt this and it just threw it in there?
I don't know, it's humanoid form or something.
Strange, right? Oh, I mean, at some level, this is the kind of stuff that like, it's a farmhouse. I love that sort of geodesic dome. Like these visions of what we have, but it sort of aligns to this sort of not too near our future or super far away, but also then like it'll throw in a weird chicken body and you're like, what is that? Like, and part of what is sort of fascinating about these tools generally is that one, it can render our world really fast, but then you all like immediately you're like, that's weird. Like that's not what it, and I've used these with students and outputs, and the role at which you try and be, which is good to keep a distance at, is that it shouldn't be used at which to sort of narrow your lens or your sort of like ideation, but mostly as a way to say like, did it get close? If it didn't, you can throw it out, right? Or just agnostic it. There's even tools that you can sort of clean, like whatever, Adobe Photoshop, you can go in there and say like, hey, just take that little thing and like get rid of it, go clean it up, move it out of there, and that's the kind of stuff. Yeah.
I think that the core principle of the prompt is that you tell the engine what to do, but I think we should also think about how can we tell it about the things not to do. Have you tried saying explicitly to the engine, do not throw irrelevant stuff on my drawing? And does it really work?
So it's a combination. There's a lot of these prompting things, but like if you absolutely do not want something in it, you have to tell it not to put it there. But a lot of times, even in the speed of prompting, we have a thing. Did you describe it the way you wanted to? Like there's this feedback loop that's quite useful, even in the realm of just our conceptual skills. Did I give it enough description? I said an Amsterdam apartment complex, and it gave me a block of apartments. If I needed one flat, it would very radically change potentially what that is. Now what I sort of love about it from a design perspective is that that's sort of like you rendered on a piece of paper and you're like, is this any good? And the answer is no, because it was done in a really fast way, right? But then it's like, but is it worth moving forward? I could change this radically in a very short amount of time with a pencil. And I could make it differently through another things. But now it's like, is it moving towards a space that you want it to be at? Obviously, things like this are quite helpful to do that. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Let's come in here, leave some comments, leave some ups, and we're going to move on to the next portion of this. Now, generative AI for fun little things like this can be quite helpful. And we can also use them in the sort of execution of more sort of relevant or related tasks that we have to do with in our jobs as well, right? Some of you may get the option to sort of run a fun workshop, just like everyone is bored and we're going to just render some houses for a fun time, right? That I want to say that like that, if you unpressurize the tool and its value, you may get people using it when they don't have to do it for something that's important, or like, and sometimes even getting like, I've gotten clients to play with this stuff and they're like, oh, I didn't even know this stuff was that useful. And you're like, are you paying attention? Like, your people need to use these things. And if you use them in low pressure moments, it gets the wheels spinning. There can be ideation and outputs. And I advocate almost all the time that like most of this generative AI stuff should be placed at the ideation early in the process. Like, don't look at it as a way to sort of like, I don't have to do the polish piece. Like, I don't have to design any more components. Like, no. Like that's actually core of what your job is, but you can use it at the front of that idea of like, have we ideated or thought about this thing enough, right? Or that thing. Now, one of the things that's also quite useful about them is that if all of us prompted a very similar thing, we all might get different outcomes as well, right? Slightly different outputs. The drawing might be a little different. And you can also get sort of the mind hive around a similar concept. Then your ideas can say, well, oh, I thought it should lean this way, or I thought it should lean that way. Your audience and who you're working with can sort of get on the same page faster because you're aligning to that opportunity. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we can align this stuff generally in our outputs, but also how sketching and using generative AI tools, not just Visual Electric, but other ones as well, can be helpful in sort of building on these things. Now, are you familiar with John Dewey? No, so he's a famous American education reformist, sort of a line in this outputs. I quote him a lot because it's sort of there. But we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And what AI and generative AI sort of generally is doing is I'm quickly reflecting on a thing that I've made, right? And designers, we learn by doing, right? We got to go make something. Like, I don't know, like we think that we need a drop down. You're like, well, how many items are in your drop down? They're like, we need 75 items in the drop down. You're like, that's a drop down is definitely not what you want to put in that drop down. I know that after years of experience, but I worked with students. And I'm like, go put 75 items in that drop down. And they're like, what? And I'm like, you got to learn that that's not a good idea. But you also could figure out that there is a way to actually solve that problem in a series of drop downs or in other ways to do that or whatever that is. But knowing the volumes and the things that you're there is about this ability to say like, yes, now I have a different option, or no, I've built this thing out and it really sucks to use. You're like, yeah, sorry. Well, don't do it. Then don't put that in front of your end user. If you think it sucks, there's no reason that you would ever want to sort of solve it that way, right? Now, we as designers use storytelling quite reasonably in that, right? I made this thing, I did all the options, I showed you that this was the solution forward. Here is how I manipulated that. And sometimes we don't have to go through the whole process. I don't have to design prototypes for every idea I've ever had, but I can say like, I don't know, I rendered it on a piece of paper and it was a bad idea. Like, this is not the way we should go, right? Now, designers wield these communication tools. Part of the conceptual things that we sort of align to is this. Now, the truth of it is visualizing stories, making things memorable, applying empathy to our outputs, and then engaging our audience in that empathy is a core of what user experiences brought to the table. And if we can improve that and the speed at which we do that, that's sort of an opportunity as it goes. If you're not familiar with Simon Sinek, it's also fine. I equate him to someone that's like the power of a simple graphic. But he sort of quotes this idea, and he's written the thing on this of it. But people don't buy what, they buy the why, and they buy why you do it. If you can help even your teams and the places you're doing a why are we doing it? A lot of places are like, use AI, and you're like, why? Like, I think you just have to ask this question so often. Why are we using it? How is it helping? Why is it meaningful for the process? Do we need to render a house in space? Yes. Okay, why? Right? You don't, but the why is because I wanted us to have fun with a dumb prompt and see what it rendered weirdly. Most of us didn't get exactly what we wanted, but most of us got things that I was sort of surprised. Like I was like, dang, it got closer than I anticipated, right? My wife is an architect and we've sort of worked out a number of prompts in this. She's like, it can't be too narrow. It can't be too broad. And I'm like, this is the same ideation process, right? Aligning on what it is that the tool can do for you is important even for using it with your teams, but also saying like, people are like, oh, I just go use an AI for that. And you're like, no, it's not going to do that well. Like, it's not going to it's not going to assemble all of your bits and bobs. Like, it's just not going to do that. But we can use it in this sort of place to make people believe. Now, when we start with the why is also related to what we're describing, right? The better we can get at describing, understanding of that output, our teams can then align on that concept as well, and using tools as to why you're using them, and then using that as a cycle for improving how the team aligns and gets your organization moving can be a fascinating way to go, right? And especially when you're at the front of concepting, like we don't know which way to go. We have lots of opportunity using AI to sort of align or show fertile ground in that is a clean one. Now, again, I'll quote other people like Steve Jobs is always in the air. Like the most powerful person is a storyteller. Like he sort of loved this because he got to stand at the front of the room. But designers generally bring some of this stuff to the stage, and we can do things. This is part of our job. We need to listen to our stakeholders to understand the problem. We need to generate new ideas off the problems that we've heard. We need to frame that in a specific way, which could be using through AI tools. We could draw it on the board. We could tell a story about how this is how it's solved and here's a better way to solve it, or whatever that is. And at some level, we're building all this towards a way that people can use the things we're trying to solve, right? And the useful of that sometimes is at the kernel of like, well, I made like that house in space that's part of a geodesic dome thing could be the initial outputs that's happening for an exhibition for geodesic building or whatever, right? Like there's so many ways to sort of visualize this and think about where its endpoint could be. But if you bring it back to its outputs, you can sort of frame and say, here's why these tools can even help us consider this new idea or align that as we go. Now, these conceptual skills that go into drawing a simple thing, describing it a meaningful way, writing it out as an output, all align into these other things that we can use in our jobs, whether it's strategic thinking, whether it's problem solving and everyone's stuck. We just need them to have fun, to sort of get them to think outside the box. Or we need to manage some change and everyone's so focused on this one thing. Let's sort of get them out of that outputs. We could even use it in the realm of quote unquote the innovation. The designers are supposed to be innovative and they're not doing anything innovative. And you're like, oh yeah, well look at this AI tool workshop that we did with our team and everyone made radically different things. That sometimes can be the thing, but it also can just be small little things. I needed to do this faster. I had a big thing I needed to solve. I broke it down into smaller chunks. I let AI do some side work for me as an assistant, and therefore I could go home and have dinner with my kids on a night that was there, or whatever that is. Now, the vision of this stuff is sort of fascinating, but the role of it is sort of cruxed in this idea that designers can bring those conceptual skills into telling stories about our users, and it results in empathy. Now, I don't have to describe empathy for you guys. You're all user experience designers, so sort of zoom through this stuff so we can get to the exercise. But fundamentally, it starts with caring who our end users are, what they need to know about, what they're going to be solving, and empathy is unique to what we design, right? Now, there's lots in our world where the designer spends no time with their end user and therefore they design things and they get into the face of, I made it, so I think it's correct, which is a dangerous one. But there's that opportunity of like, just because you're a designer making things for people also doesn't make you right? So there's that opportunity to do that. Now, tools like this allow us to translate things and tell stories about them. And the AI tools that we'll sort of look at next will sort of align to that as we go. Now, there's lots of ways to do this, but we'll sort of talk about this. I'm curious, is anyone familiar with the fog model? Ever heard the fog model before? Okay, so Fogg is also another education person, but he sort of aligned to this idea of like, when you're trying to teach people stuff, like where does users sort of succeed. And there's this idea in here known as the line of failure, which is that dotted line that comes outputs. And it's sort of translated into this idea that you can teach someone something if it's motivating and it's relatively easy to do. If it's really hard and it's hard and it's challenging to do, and your user doesn't have that much ability, it can lead to failure. Sometimes things like people like, I don't know how to draw, and you need to draw your face and render it effectively. Like, I'm going to fail because I don't have the requisite skill at which to access or apply that. Now, one of the things that's sort of challenging about the world that we occupy is that learning design and user experience exists in the space up here to the left, right? It's really high and it takes lots of ability. But sometimes people are saying, well, I want to be a UX designer and I know nothing. Like, well, you got to learn some stuff, right? You got to sort of engage in that. Where AI tools are quite fascinating, and we sort of experienced this in the last outputs, is that it doesn't take a lot of effort, right? 5 minutes, post-it note, render the world, I've got something, right? So now this sort of leads to an ability to ramp up that opportunity and get towards a place where your audience can have more skill, translate the world more meaningfully, but it has to start small. And that's where even these exercises of like, don't render this a million times in AI, don't waste all this money making a bunch of stuff, do smaller increments, align that as it goes, and then practice with them more. So generally, that's what we're here to do. Now, the fog model is sort of relevant for the things that we're designing, because as we make things, whether it's a house in space, right, or an output, it's sort of related to this idea of what can an audience, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? Right? What is your idea space generally trying to do? And designers are quite good at this, right? We sit in rooms and we say like, we need to solve big data problems. They're like, okay, well, what is the data that we need to churn? What do we need to visualize in that data? And sometimes AI tools can then be helpful in doing discovery, research, discovery, right? Like we need to generally understand where there's opportunity space. We need to know our users' outputs. We need to gather a bunch of information and tie pieces together. Human beings are incredibly good at this. There's no AI out there that can sort of do what a human brain or a design team can do. Unfortunately, we have some forces in our world that says like, fire your UX research and just do this AI thing. And you're like, what? Like, you guys missed the whole point. Like, yes, you can use AI on top of what they're doing and you may get more insights out of that, but not the opposite. But the role of these things is quite important in saying, well, what do I as a designer and an idea need to make? And how can I use the tools to render those things in meaningful ways, right? Like whether it's an idea generation, right? New concepts, we don't know what space looks like that well, we sort of know. But even our tools that we have are a rendering of the real world, right? They're a mirror of what we make. And what I sort of recommend is starting with generative AI for the space of idea generation, just what you're doing here, right? I'm pulling together things that I don't know, and I'm visualizing them, or I'm discovering things that I sort of need to tie connections around. Now, that means that we sort of use it in the realm of branching exploration, right? We could do this same exercise with 5 different houses, with 5 different places in space, where you're in the Milky Way, or you're in your galaxy, or wherever that is. But the role of it sort of branches quickly because you can say, look, I've gotten a bunch of rendered ideas, all of us in the room sort of branched out, got a bunch of different directions, and we can then say, I think this one is the most reasonable, likely. I think we could all vote like, I want to go visit that house in space. Those other ones were fine, but this one is sort of the one that we need to go towards. That, again, is part of the tools that designers can bring to the table and can make it more fun. Now, technology like generative AI, it really is helping us think, right? It's giving a feedback loop that we're there. If we extend that to our teams, we can then speed up the way in which we think, and we can produce that. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about personas. Many of you have done personas before, I imagine. Okay. Personas are pretty common. A lot of times there's a lot of people sort of telling about how the persona is dead and all these other things. I think they're still relevant in the time and space that we have. A lot of times working with clients who are like, they think they know their customer, and you're like, you do not. That's why I'm here, or that's what it is. Oh, and that can be an opportunity, but we started at the starting place as a place to glom on, use it throughout the process, build it out to what we need, and that's an opportunity here. Now, personas, as we know, can also be quickly rendered through the realm of artificial intelligence. This is both good and incredibly dangerous. So I want to sort of like preface that I'm not saying just go use generative AI to produce your end users. Like, no, right? But it is an opportunity to sort of quickly get a sense of how authentic you are to your audience, and especially under a time constraint or a workshop scenario, you can sort of say, well, is this sort of close to who our audience is? And then you can go validate that or sort of align that. Does that make sense? Now, what is sort of good and bad about generative AI is that we can sort of tell. It's like, oh yeah, that person's AI generated. But it's getting harder and harder to tell. And that is also something that's on us as designers to sort of be more try and drive authenticity into the things we make. Now, we know in some scenarios, we don't all have time to go interview 25 people, boil all those people into one neat little thing. Like that can be time consuming and quite expensive. If you have that opportunity to do those things, awesome. There's also other teams you work with who are like, anybody know their user? They're like, no, well, we got to solve something for their tomorrow. So let's go make one and let's go solve that quickly, right? Now, proto-personas can be extended, or I think actually are reasonably made more authentic through considering it through a framework called the ICF. Is anybody familiar with the ICF framework? Okay, so the ICF framework is a premise out of the WHO for doing diagnostics. Essentially, some of it comes from the medical world, but essentially it's a way to sort of frame and think about human beings through a broader lens than just like, I'm a mom or I'm a lady in Amsterdam in my 20s. It's like, no, like how do we actually align both body structures, activities, and how those participations equal? And this also is sort of quite relevant for making your personas more accessibility friendly, right? Like our users have lots of different things going on in their lives, and we can't just think about our idealized end user for who we're solving our problems for. Now, again, you can sort of start that way, but there's an opportunity to do this. Now, the WHO tool is quite helpful, and I'll sort of line and talk through this quickly, and then we'll sort of get into building one ourselves. Now, one is that you start with humanizing your end user, who they are, their name, their location, what they do. We sort of know this from a relationship of building personas. And then you start with a health or accessibility issue, whether they're suffering from obesity, or they have hypertension, or they have a sprained ankle, or whatever that health issue is, which could be a huge gamut of things. Then sort of radically translates or makes huge impacts into the needs that they have and the outputs at which we can translate for them. But we can also then use these things. Now, for example,
Just for medical.
Not necessarily. So sometimes they are medical, right? So the WHO is really focused through a lens of disability and which extends through to health, right? But the factors that affect behavior the most are sometimes associated under the health, right? Like, especially when we talk about disability-based accessibility components, right? Like I'm missing an arm, and so therefore, but like the idea of like not everyone is just an amputee. Like a mother has to hold a baby and use their phone, or like you have to hold a bag and you have to use your thing, or whatever that is. So that it's not just associated under that output, but you can sort of consider the needs of that person or that thing more meaningfully through this lens. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, again, the accessibility condition or the health condition can be this wide range, but there's that opportunity also to just make sure that you're diving deeper into the sort of psyche outputs, like the authenticity of what the audience is assembling. Now, this person, for example, they're overweight. Now, that can create problems with cardiovascular health, right? Like they can't walk as far, or they're not able to translate. They could be too large for Uber rides or outputs like that. So there's sort of accessibility issues associated underneath their access to things or how they can participate. And that can also then translate into other challenges. So in this example, they have a harder time finding rides that can fit them, so they can't actually they don't have a car and they can't get to the gym more meaningfully to sort of help in this sort of relationship of managing their outputs. Now, of course, if you sort of translate this stuff more generally into people you're actually interviewing, this can be helpful, right? Because they might actually tell you, like, it can be dangerous to make an assumption about what that sort of means for that person. But again, for speed purposes, we're going to sort of just align some of these things, try and add some authenticity, or at least sort of consider some of those factors as we go. after you go through the sort of relationship of the cardiovascular health and outputs, you get into like, what are the environmental factors that sort of lead to some of those things and could be either triggers or outputs and may result in personal factors that translate into behavior, right? So the goal here is that just sort of, you may get a deeper level of needs and outputs when you consider humans through that lens. So,
How do you validate this kind of stuff?
yeah, it's a great question. So the WHA is sort of well trafficked in the world of sort of identifying factors of end users from a diagnostic perspective. You're like, okay, like you come in to a doctor and you have hypertension. Like, well, you then need to take statins, right? So it's sort of in the sort of relationship of treating factors, right? And you validate it through talking with end users. Like, oh yeah, okay, you're going to tell me that you have you're starting from early onset Alzheimer's disease. Okay, so what does that mean for you? Like, oh, like I I'm forgetting my address all the time. Like, oh, well, that's kind of problematic for your behavior. So we could then create features that sort of align or help you get to your address faster or let you whatever. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
depending on who your end user is very different for what that factor is. Yes.
Yeah, my chat, it's just if someone's coming to an interview, it's like, I don't know, work at HSBC, and I'm like, talk to me about your health problems. And we're like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to know that?
Well, yeah, and so
Does it matter?
you likely can't go directly at them through a health lens, right? There's HIPAA laws. I mean, if you're working in a medical space, you generally can. But there is that also opportunity just to consider a broader lens of your audience through the ways at which they behave. So yes, you may not be able to say, hey, you got heart problems, right? They're like, no. But you're like, actually, okay, they're in their older age, they're a little overweight, and and that maybe keeps them from coming into the bank regularly. Why? So there's a lot that you can to understand why they might not come into the bank very regularly. But if you then understood your audience more, like, well, tell me why you're not coming into the bank very regularly. Like, oh, I got this heart issue. I really can't move around that much. So they may get to that where you understand what their outputs is, but if you're sort of aligning to it, it may help you consider different behavioral factors in what that equals for that end user. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're gonna practice one of these, but ultimately this also is an interesting way at which to sort of design or write out a more sort of health-based lens of your end user. And you're like, my user is in Detroit, and they have a health problem, and then they can do that. Yes. Here was 3. So you apply these into the factors, and I'll show you the total thing. So it goes steps down from the name and the health outputs. Then there's these things that sort of align your factors in the health base, and then down goes into your lack of food, and then outputs, whatever that is. And then this soup of things that we sort of aligned have a sort of interaction relationship, which you could write a user summary for. And this user summary, again, will sort of translate through artificial intelligence. Does that make sense? So we have around a half hour to do this one. Where is also helpful with this is we're going to write an initial summary. We can then plug that initial summary into ChatGPT, and then let's say like, hey, clean this up for me. And it sort of writes it a little nicer. And then you could take that thing. And this is where even Daisy's stringing along of like, hey, ChatGPT, help me write a better prompt for visual electric or for a visual outputs. Like, it knows some rules that we'll sort of add in there, and you can sort of align those things as well. So it's not just one, like, I only use visual electric, or I only use one tool, or like, yes, you could use ChatGPT, then align it into visual electric, and then plug that back into ChatGPT to see if they get 2 different images outputs. And that stuff is sort of fun as well. And can be quite relevant to say, is it actually narrowing it, right? A lot of times it's adding less, or it's trying to squeeze it. And so to be like, no, I don't want you to take that out of there. I want that thing to be added back in, or whatever that is. Is that clear? Okay, so let's I'm gonna jump into our Figjam page. Oops. Figma. Okay, so this is over here. And what I want you to do is I want you to just copy this this document, the ICF framework, and a copy of the persona. You just drag it over here, wherever you're going to use it. And I'm going to give you around 30 minutes. We'll do this in 20 minutes, and we'll spend the last 10 rendering an image of our person. Yeah, just do this at once. And you can look at this as a reference place, but again, if you have an end user that you're sort of already thinking about, you have somebody that you work with that you're sort of need to throw through the lens of the ICF thing, fine. Like, I don't care who our end user is necessarily. And again, for speed purposes, we're just gonna choose someone and choose a relative outputs. If you want to use, someone who's obese or has hypertension or whatever that is, allow that to be your outputs. Does that make sense? And just drag it over here to the right. And if you have questions, I'll come around. I'm gonna put on a little bit of ambient music, and we'll try and wrap this up in the next 30 or 40 minutes.
Can you capture this part?
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, and if you wanted to do a small one on a piece of paper or something, and share it with me, I'd be happy to sort of help you render that as well. If you need a piece of paper, you want to do post-it note. Okay, great. Yeah, made it a little harder without the. Oh yeah, we'll take a short break after this. Thank you. I'm prone to just race to the end. Good. Okay. And then add your name to those so we know knows whose is whose. Take a quick screenshot.
Oh, you're doing the whole room there.
Yeah, you're fine. You're doing nothing wrong. You're doing all the things you're doing. You're fine. I was just wondering around it. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just the music was coming on my laptop.
Oh,
Like I turned it off and I was like,
oh yeah. I turned it on, and then it may be forcing you guys to have it on.
yeah, we also. Yeah, that's okay, that's.
That's normal. Oh, I thought it would just play out of mine, and then it would be in the room. But
I'm enjoying it.
it's great. Yeah.
I'm afraid of touching it because
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, and if you you need to take a break, you can go restroom. I'm not gonna. Don't just go.
Yeah.
This is the only place I see power. And when I come sit here, you're welcome to do that. No, you're totally fine. As things start dying, you're like, no. Here's a turn.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
just read out from this, not get about this.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, we should say it's still.
The key here is don't super overthink it. Just quickly move down it. You sort of working top down. Typically, choosing the behavior or the health condition aligns the activities and things below. So as you choose obesity or what I chose obesity as our outputs, that sort of affects the left thing in the middle, thing the right.
Oh, so are there activities and participation supposed to be to do with the health thing?
Yes. Well, of the user and of the health group. So because they have overweight, obesity, it can cause a body function output. So they're sort of translated.
Right.
I don't know what your what your health or accessibility issue was, but that says cause and effect.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And some of this is that aligning of like, oh, I didn't really consider that, like, they were a new mother.
Yeah.
And their body function is that they have to carry around a young child. Their activities may be limited because they can't, right, train or whatever. Does that make sense? Or whatever that is. There's lots potentially in there, but it's be an interesting way to make your brain go. Like,
So what would be the difference between an activity and a participation?
so yeah, the activity, they again they're related. The activity typically is like maybe associated with software or outputs of like I am trying to do something, and the participation is like I am trying to get from point A to B. There's the activity. The participation is I'm writing a train. Or I'm getting in a car. But is that clear?
Yeah, I'm just trying to apply it to like the persona.
What is your
Well, I'm
your
basing
what
on
is your health what is your health
stress.
stress? Okay, and that affects their brain. Okay, and that may help. That may keep them. So is the stress anxiety driven? Is the stress work? Okay. So that affects their planning.
Yeah. Presentation skills, that kind of thing.
And yeah, and their participation in presenting well.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, fine.
And so then that might then translate into an environmental factor there is presenting at work.
Okay.
And their personal factors there are feeling like you're not productive, you're not gonna get a raise, you're gonna get fired, or whatever that is. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Again.
You get it, yeah.
I get where you're going with this.
I see where you're going. I see where that goes.
You okay.
Now, and again, there's sort of an interesting thing in that, like stress can also cause other factors, but at least that's one deeper lens into. I think I saw your woman, Denise.
Denise in the world, where does that sound?
She's a real event. God, she's gonna do that. It looks dangerous.
Yeah.
So we are stuck at the first step of generating the portrait.
The portrait, okay.
Too much creativity.
Too much there's no such thing as too much creativity. That's if anything with generative AI, you still get too much. You get too much as it goes generally. No, grab one quick.
Yeah.
I'm trying. Well, the point is we'll have an opportunity to actually render this. So your first initial like, oh, that person. Like, no, I need a little bit more. I'm gonna write a little description of that person, then that more refined, maybe a little bit more descriptive outputs so that you're somewhere around. Does that make sense? If you'll notice, a lot of what I'm encouraging is like, it's not just one time to use the render. It's like render it. You could Google like what a Denise looks like and grab something from the front page of Google pages, and you're like, no, I'm gonna use AI to make her
Google's doing
feel like a stressed human.
Google's doing it good.
It's doing all right.
Imagery is perfectly.
What is a little bit of a bummer about what's going on with AI in the generation world as well is that it's feeding itself. So it's like all of the images that are created by AI are then being used by AI. It's not gonna end well. It's not gonna end well. Okay, and you got Denise over here. That's starting place. Yep. She's stressed. Good. You can write quick. Try to follow whatever the math is.
Right.
Family, good.
So good. It's not that. Okay. So my good. I think, yeah. I don't know how to
There's something you heard. I'm just gonna keep my attention on this. It's associated with health, it can be associated with health. So health may be the largest factor that impacts behavior. That's why you consider the health. So there's lots of needs that people have. So to be like, health isn't the only one, but a lot of times we ignore like an accessibility or health. In identifying needs, like all the needs are sometimes aligned to like training. They need to buy something. Yeah, okay, Amazon, yeah, they do. But is that really like, is that really what's going into their brain when they're like, whatever? Stressed out with their fluids going through the world. No, yeah, the health component, and I think I'll use Jax over here just because he's along. So Jax has the health condition is stress, and that creates nervousness in their body, which is affecting the activities of their client meetings and presenting well, right? So the needs of that person is very different, and you could change the social construct for the location of where stress impacts and nervousness impacts their life, but aligning it just to this factor changes the way we summarize or place that context into our intention. Obviously, speeding these things up is quite good, but work deadlines. I like your work deadlines. It's just
It's interesting because as you start writing the summary, you're like, oh, I'm understanding what the thing about is.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it goes back and forth, right? And I think an important thing is here is this activities and the body function. The body function is directly associated with the health, with the accessibility or health component, right? And then as you write a summary of like, Denise is an event planner with stress, right? And then you're filling it in, you're like, wait, okay, this now needs to make it into a story. So write one quickly, right? Just filling in the things. And where it gets a little bit hard is this, where it's like manage to be in their personal factor. You just sort of write it in there initially and then go read through it and be like, oh, that doesn't make sense. I'm gonna fix it a little bit as you go. Just like any Mad Lib, like you can only get so far with it, right? To some extent. But and I'll even show you this one here. So like Daniel Brown is an IT specialist from West Virginia. Like all this stuff is thrown in here, but when I put it back through ChatGPT, it like cleans it up a little bit. And I'll just sort of. Oh yeah, because we're gonna try and finish this in the next hour. So we get.
Yeah.
Are you at the writing of the summary?
Yeah, I'm looking up all the photos.
Oh, okay, great.
But I also don't know what's the personal
So the personal factor would be directly associated underneath the health condition. So diabetes, the personal condition there may be, what is the activity that they're trying to do? Carrying snacks.
Oh, this is the activity they're trying to do. I thought this was the activity that they were affected.
Yes. Well, but that may associate itself under the environmental factor. So what were they doing there? They were trying to go to snacks. Carrying snacks, drinks. So that may affect the environmental factor. There may be out in on a hike. Well, traveling on a train, like there's something associated totally. Where like around lunchtime, like what is it? Like they have to worry about their blood sugar more at meal times, or it's like I don't know what that is. But diabetes in particular may be associated under a different set of environmental factors.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So if your activity is about snacks and eating, right?
Yeah.
Then your environmental factor may be at lunch in a restaurant.
Yeah.
So what does that make sense? Sorry.
But what would their personal factor be?
So their personal factor may be managing their blood sugar in public.
Okay.
It might be knowing the blood sugar, the calories or what food is like they can actually eat. It's not.
Okay.
That makes sense. Now, that environmental factor at a restaurant or ordering food, it might be different if they were on a bus and they're like, oh, my blood sugar's dropping and I'm told I can't eat on a train and now, but I need to for my blood sugar or whatever that is. Does that make sense? And that personal factor may be associated underneath. Managing your personal factor should be managing your blood sugar. Right? That's like, oh, that's the personal factor they're trying under relate to. Uh-huh. Good. Okay, good. You're getting everyone's got if you got an initial pass, I don't want to refresh you, but once you get an initial pass on your summary, take that summary and go plug it into ChatGPT. It's like, hey ChatGPT, like help me clean this up. It's just like, hey, it's like I'm looking to make this more succinct. And it'll do a little round on it. Yeah. ChatGPT. Clean this up for me. Can you make this a little bit more?
This makes sense.
Yeah, can you make this a little bit easier to read? Can you make this a little snazzy or whatever? Just clean. I usually say, "Hey, ChatGPT, can you clean this up for me?" You just like plug it in there. This I'm a writer. I'm always like, "Hey, ChatGPT, you give me a better starting place for this sentence," and you're like, "Yeah, okay, cool." See,
I feel like
so now you can be
better than I did.
Yeah.
Fair play. That's fine.
And then now you can go there and say, okay, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to put a little bit more information on like Denise, her age, her location. And I've done that. You can see here, like Daniel, he is.
So he wants to add in this stuff.
Yeah, a little bit more persona stuff. Exactly. Like he's 42 from Fairmont. Exactly. Okay. Johnny Bravo is a young 25-ish. Okay. You got it. You guys got it. You'll be fine. Good. Okay. So now that you have your second version, plug it into the persona below, into your IACF summary, and you can add their name in there, whatever, Denise. Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be too big. Or that thing can be bigger.
Yeah, that's gonna be way too big.
It's gonna be way too big. Yeah.
This needs to be like a pound. Luckily.
Oh.
This one.
Yeah.
I can do that myself. That sounds all.
Oh, because it really gave you a lot more detail on Denise.
Gave me like an essay on Denise's whole life story.
Calm down there, ChatGPT. All right, they give you a little bit too. Maybe that's a little bit too much of a starting place. I don't know if that is actually
too creative.
Okay, has everybody gotten at least an initial pass on the ICF description? Still working on it a little bit. Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes. Once you get an initial pass, I'm just going to talk about what we're going to do next with that. Is we have a user, right? Jack's working on Denise. She's in her mid-30s.
Oh, I didn't do an age.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I just have a question. So actually, based on the graph and what we have there, we need to be much precise and align all this information into this prompt that we have below the whole graph, yes?
Yes.
So because if we change this prompt, we will receive completely out of scope results probably, yes? And that's why we should stay aligned with this prompt, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's helped building this output to sort of help describe the user a little bit more through the lens of ICF, some needs and outputs that might be there. But essentially, we're going to try and go recreate this person relatively quickly, and we have an initial starting place, right? A summary of that person through a short description. Okay, great. 36. And she's an event planner who's stressed. But what I want you to do is we're going to take this description, Denise 36, whose outputs, and we're going to we're going to use a different AI tool for this. You could use ChatGPT or whatever if you wanted. You can also use reclaim.ai, which is the one that I have done. And you can ask it to build a human for you, right? Like, this is Daniel Brown. He's 42 from West Virginia. And you're just going to take that summary, plug it into an AI for generating a human, and see if it renders Denise for you.
I'm excited to see it.
Or Johnny.
We should plug it into Raycraft or where?
This description,
Mm-hmm.
plug that into ChatGPT for a quick round of revisions.
Yeah.
Take that summary that comes out of ChatGPT and put it into your description in Raycraft. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And it should just have some descriptions, like Johnny Bravo needs to be 20, okay, he's 25, great. Yep, perfect. So you take that and you plug it into this description, say, this is my guy, Daniel Brown. He's 42 male, he's a little overweight. He's nerdy with glasses, because he was an IT specialist. So you can add some language in there to try and improve or build a more accurate person. Again, for personas purposes, we're just speed in rendering a human. If you were actually working on a persona, I would say, like, go do that. But you might get closer to who Denise is, have a sense of who that is, and then I might render you. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Great.
Well, I've actually met Denise.
You've met Denise.
Denise is the real one.
So if, at some level, if you have real users, just use your users' faces and stuff.
To see whether well, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how close it gets.
How close it gets, okay?
That's great.
How do you make this with people? Wants to make me an animal.
Oh,
Oh, I see. Oh, I can see that.
yes. Photorealism, yeah, in here you can choose photorealism. I was just using raw 3, but you can also do like studio photorealism of a face, retro snaps. Again, Reclaim does a little bit more around humans. At least I found that they're really trying to do more like fashion photography stuff.
Yeah, but you guys actually got a surprise.
Yeah.
Revelation.
And I feel if I was like a fashion model, I would be so frustrated with AI. I'd be like, what? No one's ever gonna take a photo of me like holding like, yeah, it's like H&M or any of these places.
They're actually like doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and there's not too far off of a near future where like you go to H&M and it knows what you look like and it renders you on all of their models.
I have a design. They not build it. I mean, it was H&M, but
Yeah, I don't know if I love that idea either, but it's sort of a option.
I do. I think that'd be great. I want every model to look like me, so I know what it looks like on me. That's always been a huge,
Technical hurdle.
well, it's always been a huge opportunity for somebody to work out.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody ever has.
But nobody ever has, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give us another 10 minutes to do this, just so we don't go too late. If you need to take a break after you render your human, that would be fine. But the importance of rendering this human in your essentially like a quick proto persona, like these are not like research deep personas, right? Like, oh, there you go. You got a good face. Good. All right. Put it in there. Add your little short just summary, and then based on your needs and client and outputs from the render above, align them to some goals and needs, just like we have in other personas, right? This is light, but it could be related to their health factor, to the environmental thing that they need, to etc. Use the ICF framework to sort of fill in some of those goals and needs.
ChatGPT took out the fact that she was stressed, struggles of nervousness. Is that important stuff? It's
and there's these things that's sort of fascinating, like you were saying, like ChatGPT added all this information about them, but took out all the stuff that's relevant for. Yes, exactly. Or that words that could be useful for a designer to consider in making their presentation application less stressful. Like you got to give a major presentation. Let's make this interface go away. Let's let you focus on little things that's there. Unstress your AI tool.
The way I noticed, I was like, this woman just doesn't look stressed to me, and then I read it. I was like, oh, it's because it's not even
Because it's not in there. Not even in the options. Denise, 36. I like that your Denise started as an African American lady. It's it's like it's the Denise.
I mean,
we made her white. We made her a white lady.
I asked Google like for an event planner, and that's what they gave me, and then after gave me the race.
And you asked reclaim.ai to make Denise 36.
Yeah. Let's see.
Good. Okay, is that making sense? You making sense? Making progress. Oh yeah, okay. Johnny Bravo over here, working out. Good.
So first of all, arterial fibrillation.
I like his name is Johnny Bravo. Another cartoon character.
Yes, exactly. But I don't know why even I thought that maybe this tool that we were wearing this somehow catch this that this is about, or somehow connect this name and surname from the cartoon, but not really.
It's sort of fascinating. Like the name is sort of irrelevant at some level, right? But like we were just saying, I Googled event planner and it showed up like a 33-year-old African American lady, and then I asked it to make Denise, and it's a white lady. I'm like, I wonder what's going on there. Like, is that the role? Now, the more descriptive, obviously, that we can get at the persona level, even for rendering through a generative AI, is actually quite helpful for the authenticity that we're trying to bake into the needs and the outputs which we're doing. Now, at speed, like if you know a user that you're interviewing and his name is Johnny Bravo, use Johnny Bravo's face. Like, don't use AI to do this at all, right? But it can be quite helpful and sort of like quickly, like, oh, I've considered some needs that I didn't have before, and now I have a way to visualize and discuss who this person is. And with teams particularly, we all have an idea who our end user is. All of us, let's render who we think that person looks like. That's sometimes quite enlightening to understand how different we think about a Johnny Bravo working out. Right? Like one will make him buff, and another person will put them at a whatever Planet Fitness.
It's all about the prompt. I think I could add more directions. So just try to align to the cartoon character and then maybe put the environment of used humans.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that in the next portion. So that's sort of an awesome thing in which like personas don't really capture a lot of that stuff, but the next piece we're going to be doing is going to be aligned to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question, how do you deal with the limitation that image generation tools have around bias?
So that's where I was saying, like, get your whole team. The bias is only experienced by like where other people describe them differently, right? So like it started as an African American lady, then it got translated to a white lady, which was not on him, not because he said, "Hey, make me a white lady," right?
Yeah.
It was just because of the way in which the tools sort of have baked into them that challenge. That is part of the cycle of which we're trying to bake out. We're trying to get out of our personas and stuff in the first place, right? We're trying to make sure that we're not just sort of leaning on far too much stereotype, on like that your persona is super biased towards a certain end user or not. Very hard, but much easier to do when you can sort of say, like, look at how quickly we rendered this, and it's not accurate. Why is this all our sort of point of view? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's really hard. I love doing this stuff with students because a lot of times I start with things like, oh, Johnny Bravo, or they give them a name like from a acting school or something. They give like a celebrity name, like, oh, it's Beyonce. You're like, no one is, that's a singular entity. No one else has the needs that Beyonce has. You know what I mean? It's a very different.
I've got Denise's actual persona as well.
Oh yeah.
I literally made it on Friday.
On Friday, great. And again, there's this feedback loop actually that personas I think are really fascinating, and especially with teams that are building them relatively quickly, is they're all there as a feedback loop. Hey, like, have you guys thought about your end user? Do you know who Denise is? I'm like, no. You're like, well, here, read about Denise. Like, do you think that's what it is? And they're like, no, I don't think this is Denise at all. I met a lady that came in the other day, and she was more like Denise. Okay, well, what was that lady's need, or whatever that is? Does that? So they're an empathy tool, but a lot of times we use them in such ways that make them feel concrete, like they're sort of locked in stone. Like, no, this is just an opportunity to add this to the conversation, and that's where tools of rendering are really quite quick to that. Say, well, if we're not accurate, let's render a new one. Let's go. Let's talk about this too. We don't have to start from scratch, but at least we can get the visual of this. Or Denise can be 12 different people, but all have similar needs, and that's the role of personas generally, right? And that's what we want to sort of bake into them, and make sure that they have scale. Because if it's like they quickly get dusty or don't get used because someone goes like, that's not really Denise. Why would I even care about this thing? It's not even accurate. Like, okay, well, what are ways in which the team can sort of align to this, make them own it themselves, right? And that's where I've had this really be successful, is when you get even people that are not designers, don't know how to make a person. You're like, go tell me what your user is like. Go render who you think your like banking client is. And they're like, oh, and they like don't know how to write it right. Like, see, this is the value we bring. Like, we can sort of do that. Or more interestingly, they render something and you know that it's not good. And so you can have a conversation about like, well, is this really who we're serving? Like, let's talk about what that actually is. Okay, did everybody, I think we got pretty close here. As you get you don't need to go overboard on some of these things, but here, I think this is one, like what Jack was doing. Here's a lady. You had other ones that you had rendered of her, or if you want to put other options in there, that's fine as well.
Sorry, can you zoom in to this lady? She's 36.
She's 36. This is Denise. This is what
Okay.
this was and Jack, can you include your prompt?
Older. Sorry, because of this.
Yeah, the prompt is that.
Oh, it's this 38-year-old. Great. So this is the prompt. It'll render different things. There's also a thing of this sort of fascinating about generative AI tools is that you sort of know that it was generated by AI. Like, look at how perfect that's. Why is she so beige? And why is it lit so perfectly? Some sort of like smooth faces or like weird wrinkles. That there's lots of ways to visualize who our audience is, but where that can be quite helpful, which we were talking about before, is I see a lot of personas that are just like a headshot. I'm like, I don't really know what that person's doing. But the event and the sort of planning, the ICF framework sort of aligns to sort of relations, like putting that human in action or making them do something. They're stressed at a meeting. The context of the meeting is quite relevant to what you're trying to articulate, and AI helps us render that stuff with relative speed, right? In relative outputs. and that opportunity is sort of aligned. So let me come back to my lecture here, and we'll spend. Does anybody need a break? Whatever time. Okay, I'll keep going. So as I was saying, we folded our rendering into our outputs. There's sort of an opportunity to demo that, and we can sort of go over those a little bit. Now, we just created a relative persona relatively quickly, right? Whether it's Denise or Johnny Bravo or whoever that is. And now there's this opportunity to say, okay, we have an idea of who our end user is. They have some needs, rendered them, maybe what we think is accurate. And now there's an opportunity which to also use generative AI tools to extend that into a scenario in which that person is achieving a goal or aligning to what our problems are is that we're going to be gathering. And this can be achieved through UX scenarios. Has anybody ever done a UX scenario or sort of know of UX scenarios? No.
What is it?
What is it? Okay, I'll show you. A UX scenario is essentially just a storytelling component around building the context in which your persona achieves what they're trying to do as a written out statement and a way to sort of visualize it relatively quickly. So it's like a story. Yeah, it's essentially like the kernels of an initial storyboard. A lot of times it's just a single frame. And AI tools are particularly good at rendering the world relatively quickly, not necessarily as a series of slides or a story. Actually, AI tools can be kind of hard for making AI storyboards because you have to put the same actor in the same scene in multiple places. And trying to just say like, take Denise, and it's like, who's Denise? Like, use this photo and put them over here. Like that's a little harder for it to do, but we already know that like that's automatically what they're going to be sort of doing to some extent. Now for us, this is what we're going to do in the next piece. Is we've now created a proto persona, right? Whether it's Denise or Johnny Bravo or there's some others, and we're going to plug it into a proto persona or a UX scenario. And so essentially we have some needs that we've sort of identified already of what they can do with diabetes or with their health. What was Johnny Bravo's health?
Atrial fibrillation.
Okay, atrial fibrillation. So he's got a heart murmur.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
The heart is not beating equally. It's beating pauses and sometimes
Yeah.
faster.
Yes, great. Okay, so that may be and that may be aligned to their goals of like being able to be more comfortable working out and having the things not do that or whatever. There's sort of, I need to work out my heart so it doesn't do those things. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the necessary outputs to do that. But we're gonna plug this into our sort of template. This was in our instructional workout. If you sort of say you can take this and align it over here. So come copy this as a quick way, and we'll get into the next piece of this. But let me just sort of talk you through the steps of this. Now, here's one of like Samantha Derby. We're using a similar thing of like you build out. I'm gonna go back one. Starting with the persona, a short description of that person. You already sort of have that as your ICF summary. Can be plugged in here, and then you can go align to some goals, which may be part of your user needs or your frustrations or your pain points that your audience is experiencing. And then there is a unique scenario of hiking or a work meeting or being at the gym or wherever they are that you're sort of trying to visualize or articulate, and that is where you sort of align that. This thing as well as can be sort of written. The scenario can be sort of baked in. They have a routine or outputs to sort of align that. And then they have, Samantha is passionate about biking enthusiasts. This is sort of plugged into ChatGPT to sort of align it, just like we were doing before, right? You write an initial scenario, you then say, hey, ChatGPT, help me refine this scenario so it can be sort of aligned to a rendering tool, and that can sort of help you. Now I'm going to show you just some samples of the stuff that I've done in other workshops. So, for example, here's Amanda. This was the drawing of Amanda running. Not very good. And the idea is we're going to do the same thing that we did with the pencil sketch, with the house drawing. You're going to render a quick drawing of what you think the scenario is for Denise or Samantha or whatever that is, and then we're going to plug that same drawing into Visual Electric to render a world out of our scenario. So is this clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one that was done with running, right? Crappy things, but now I have Samantha that's running. Here was another one with Randall. Randall he was frustrated at outputs. Here is one of Samantha Derby trying to get places, rendering the world in a way that's on our bike. And the way in which this sort of works is you're going to create your scenario. You're going to sketch a quick version of that. You could do, if you want to use a Post-it note again, that's fine. I just draw in Figjam, which is probably easier. Plug that drawing and short scenario description into Visual Electric, and then plug it back into Figjam. Is that clear? We're going to spend the next 30 minutes on this around, and I'll put on some tunes for that 30 minutes. So ChatGPT, here we go. So as I said, copy this, put it over here. You can copy your Samantha or whoever that is. Like that's a way to get a starting place. Some of the descriptions, the ICF scenario summary as your goal, as your description of who your end user is. So. Good. Good. Great. And like before, label it. Start with your end user, just a short description to do that little type summary of your end user. Then jump over to your goals. Your goals are likely aligned in your BCF framework. And then you'll come in and write a little short description of the specific scenario of which Denise is achieving a stress-free meeting preparation. I'll zoom in on this sample that I have.
Right.
So this was Craig. He was in Miami trying to get a sandwich. But these are like a little, because they were done for workshops, they're like, yeah, that's very simple. And you're like, yeah, it's another 20 minutes. Like that scenario was done quickly. Good. Straight over the shoulder. I have around, I give. You guys have been doing this for about 25 minutes. What?
Pretty good.
Is that pretty good?
ChatGPT should need to know this one.
ChatGPT's doing, you're already doing a pretty good job, Denise. Bravo, ChatGPT, we really hit that scenario right on the head.
Sorry.
And there is a sort of fascinating thing that ChatGPT will get, it's not starting from scratch, right? It is getting better. Like you've already given it some data that's within sort of. Oh,
You're going to get data.
But the synthetic users.
well, so fundamentally, synthetic users are sort of problematic, but in the speed at which we can sort of think about and render an idea, like anything, personas are a starting place. Is this accurate to my end user? And then you can be like, well, it's close. And then I went and talked to 5 other people that were really close to this. So I don't have to change this. I don't have to radically throw this persona out. So they're not fundamentally, I mean, yes, they're rendered synthetically, right? The ChatGPT, like there's no this lady does not exist. Right? This is not a real human, you can tell. But if you get your audience and the designers you're working with, be like, oh yeah, yep, that feels close. That's so much better. I love using this stuff in the realm of a workshop. Time box, you can't think about your audience that long. So these tools are quite useful for speeding up that long trajectory of these. That's where they should be more human. They should be more research, right? Like, no, don't use an AI rendering of your end user if you have a research pool of 50 that you talk to, like use some of those, right? I was talking with a researcher who they took all of their research, all of their participants, did photos of all the people they interviewed, and they asked ChatGPT something to render a human based on what all the people they talked to, and that's sort of a fascinating slide. Oh yeah, it's cobbling together all these different people that sort of talk to. That makes sense.
So just about the ChatGPT, change everything.
Oops. And I'm curious if you're using, because you could try and use some descriptions of Denise, or even the image of Denise. Like take this one.
Yeah, sure. Now I'm trying to.
That's a link that I've not tried.
I think you will not be getting.
Yeah, the deadline is approaching. Yeah, okay. So do a quick little drawing of Denise, like sitting at her desk with all the papers around her. I don't know. What is this? What is the scenario in which she is stressed, prepared for that? Going to a UXPA conference and has to give a talk.
There's this tool and I'm exploring a lot. It's called Fauna AI.
Flora Fauna AI? Oh, I don't know that one.
This is like combining all these tools together in one thing, and it's node based. So basically you have ChatGPT and then you have all the models like image generation, and then it creates a video like all of the branching that it has, and the branching is kind of doing all the conceptual work and everything.
Oh, as a sort of strings, so you can say you can prompt it once and it'll send it through like all the models to get different outcomes.
And back to the model and back to the text and back to the video, like sort of feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, I find that stuff fascinating because like obviously there is a strat, like one of the challenges with a lot of these tools is like they're not going to win, right? And a lot of them are also scaffolded or built off existing platforms. Like, you know, they're using a model that's already like some of them plug into ChatGPT. Like it's really ChatGPT, but it's just the tools that are built on top of that. And But it becomes more about, that's like almost like a programming, like I need to create X. I need to string together a process that is automatable, right?
Yeah.
Versus relying on a human being to go to ChatGPT. Okay.
Interesting about this like Figjam,
Uh-huh.
because it's a canvas based and it has nodes, and then you can connect and see everything together, like not running from this tool to the other tool. And but it was very slow. I tried it, the problem is that the generation is slow, so it takes long time. So I gave up actually with but the idea was super.
And the rendering speed, yeah, this like how quickly can it get you your idea back? Or how like what is the lag time? This is I should argue this like the fastest lag time is a pencil on a piece of paper, like that's the fastest that you can make. And as you add more distance to it, it creates you like trust the system less, right? Like they use this examples of interaction design, like using a keyboard on your the lag time on your controller forces people to push the button harder. That's not actually help, like mashing the button does not change the speed, but the end user has an emotional response to the lag. And they were like, I'm not gonna, that should, right? Frustration results in a rhythm. And that is being borne out in all of the tools we use, right? We like expect them to show up. It's like, I wanna be able to use Figma on the train. Like, what, why? What makes you think that that's meaningful to you to be able to connect it to the internet at all times while you're riding in a train in whatever? Does that make sense? So the role of can these get up to the speed of thinking at the realm of which we render? That's a weird future. And puts more importance on stuff like that. So if we can just draw and it starts rendering the world for us.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of this weird future of like, yeah, that could be design systems, or that could be people that we're talking about, that could be unique scenarios. I think that has huge implications for storyboarding, right? Like I need to visualize the world in a certain way. I can render it all out in one sitting.
And what do you think about this Google Stitch?
Yeah.
The UI design, what is your opinion about that?
I tried it and I was sort of impressed with the like copy to Figma button. I was like, oh shit, Google put a copy to Figma button in there? Like, and that sort of back and forth thing is still the holy grail, right? That I don't just, all of design, especially design systems, is all going one way. I make it in thing, it has to go into code, and it very rarely comes back to design. But the role of vibe coding and using AI to do this is like, can we make a circular economy? Can what the developers do go to the designers, go back to code, go. So then I don't have to sort of say, look, I have handoff. There's all these screens for you, but now you can tell me you can make that in 8 sprints. Well, come on, that's a lot, right? Versus, hey, I made this thing and you made that thing, and now we're stitching it together over time. And for tools like this, I think what's valuable is that like, what's hard about scenarios is that the context is hard to think about, but if we as designers can build those contexts faster, we then think radically different about what is being solved in that scenario now. And that then forces us not to just stand behind a desk or like, oh yeah, make this button. Does it work? Is it working in that scenario? Is it making Denise's world more stressful?
Do you need to grab a coffee or?
So you're stressed.
Or snack? There's some snacks.
How can I add?
How can I add this one? Oh, here's Denise. Smiling. Smiling. Oh, yep. Rendered. Here we go. Cool. Ooh. As I was like, she's stressed.
How did it evolve from cartoonish pictures to more human-like pictures.
So
Was it prompted explicitly to do that, or?
I believe we'll have to ask Jake, but I believe he just chose a different rendering style.
Okay,
So,
okay.
where photorealistic stuff is quite helpful is that like, yeah, that's just renderable. But I actually think for some of these things where you don't want to look the real world, like a cartoon, like personas, sometimes like I was so students like, don't make a persona
From the
a
cartoon.
cartoon. But now I'm like, no, you can rent most of it's because they were just choosing cartoon off of Google images, look right. But if they can render an idea and then make it more cartoony because it's not solidifying into a real person yet, that actually helps tell a different story. And it's particularly for things like a persona or a scenario that you haven't got baked in yet. Rendering not right now, that's basis here. Now, things like this, not as helpful because there's no context, right? Things like this, okay, she's at a desk, she's in a space. Now you can start saying, well, what is the environmental factors that go into Johnny Bravo or whatever, working out? And it's quick little scenario.
Why?
Oh.
How is it possible? No, it's,
Alright, I love it.
I mean, it's impossible to have a limit.
I know this. I remember using Adobe back in Adobe Illustrator for screens, and they like put a limit of 100 frames or something, and I got really mad. I was like, this is insane. A Illustrator is like the whole point is why would it matter? Like somebody arbitrarily set 100 as this thing, and that just makes no sense to me. And like ultimately, I like to look for Figma and some of these things sort of fix.
I'm not sure how about the Figma and its tools, but once I was trying to prepare a workshop for the users, for the team I was working, because we were building some kind of a, in our application that I'm designing, we want to measure some kind of a metrics. And I was trying to get the feedback from other perspectives, like from developers, what they would like to see from the product owners, stuff like this. And I was preparing myself for the workshop, and I already simulate, let's say, what kind of feedback I could get. I post everything on the postcards, but I was using Miro. It's exactly the same whiteboard as a Figma.
Yeah.
And there was a feature I couldn't, and what was the next step? Gatorade post-its with a lot of different perspectives. I was trying to somehow group. I couldn't do this because it was really hard for me. And there was this feature, AI feature that I used for grouping and naming each, let's say, group with what type of ideas, whether they are
We're doing faster affinity mapping.
Yeah, and I was like super amazed. I was like, whoa. I was like reading every single idea, and it was like really hard for me to categorize it. And the Miro did it for a second. I was like, okay, full of my workshop. So
yeah, and there's these things like that. That's like I have all these items. Before I would have had to read all of them as a human being and make a category name and organize them in space. And now it's like, hey, AI, just like can you categorize this stuff for me? Useful, but also there's that like, wait, how does it? Is that the right organizational structure? So there's sort of like it's like there's trusting it.
yes, I know, but somehow it was, it's just did something actually. So I could rely on it or I could check it, but actually it helped me to at least find out somehow some categories, some groups.
Because there was a lot of busy work in like sort of organizing and moving cards around and reading other people's stuff.
Even propose something that I could start working on instead of like having nothing and trying to figure it out what the group, what actually the let's say the outcome, these ideas, how can I group, how can I name them? It was like,
and even those tools, AI of like sort of pulling out assets, giving you bullet lists, sort of summarizing things, organizing and sort of structuring data in a meaningful way, is the stuff that kept people from doing those things. We don't want to do a workshop like that again. It's just a lot of ideas that no one ever sees and never gets organized, and it just gets buried in this thing. But no, look, these things speed us up. We have tools that can sort of. So therefore, we should do more of that because we no longer have the long sort of analysis arc, right? It's like a lot of places that are like, we don't want to do user research. so long to analyze it. We're like, not anymore. Use Dovetail and use their use a transcription service and pull out the all that stuff that used to take weeks and months to do is now being shortened in meaningful ways. But that should then open up more room to say do more of put more at the front end of the data, and equally stuff like this, articulate more scenarios because you can do them faster. Don't narrow your scenarios too quick. AI can help us render and generate lots of this stuff. And you can sort of move that ideation stuff forward into teams doing lots of this, then you can sort of have a more meaningful way in which to say is this a scenario worth designing for, right? We thought about a lot of them, all of us came up with different ones, now we can sort of throw it off. And that's the sort of collaboration of this, or even lots of images that get rendered of someone. Which one is important for our client, or which one is actually meaningful to the scenario that's written, right? What's a better way to tell this story as it sort of goes that way. So, and yeah, that's essentially whatever. Just get that last piece, and then we'll take a look at what we rendered.
Oh, there's food out there.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, sure. So you're supposed to be break, and there is actually supper, not supper, but lunch or something.
Snacks.
Nice. But are you planning some break or not? You will go into.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we'll visit it. Well, let's get this wrapped up, and then we'll just have a quick little. I have a couple sort of salient takeaways. So hopefully you find them insightful. But even in here, I was just saying, come in and vote on some stuff. You have a couple of images rendered here. You might want to just say this one is more close to Denise.
Not being.
Which can't not be. I like that there was a question of oh, why is there one's cartoony? And I'm like, you likely rendered them as a cartoon.
No, I just gave it the prompt and it did what
Yeah.
it wanted to do.
It what did it
What's
look.
the cat?
Yeah, the cat was just all I did was give it this quote. And then it
They gave you a cat. That's weird.
the first thing it did was a cat. I was like, huh, I don't know if that's more about my quote or my
The picture that you drew?
Post, the way how the cat is posing is very interesting.
yeah.
I like that. Likely because lots of cats are named Denise. It is weird. There is a strange thing about AI and cats. I don't know what it's like. It's a lot of humans making weird cat photos and stuff. Maybe it's sort of. I think it ties back to the core of the internet. At least I was cat. The cat keyboard. Yeah, one of the first internet memes. Keyboard cat.
In the day.
I have a friend of mine. He works at JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in America, and he has a cat that they sent to space. Well, they sent a video of his cat through a space laser.
Wow.
His name is and his cat has become famous in the weird internet cat world. I'm like, are you making more money off of taters than you are over at JPL? And he's like, taters won a Webby award and stuff. And you're has to take his people ask him about taters all the time, and it's like we did a thing and I made a video of my cat. And it happened to be his cat.
Wow.
It's funny.
I make more money with that.
I'm like, we should. I'm like, dude, you are missing out on that. You own taters as your cat. You should make a book about taters in space.
We should have a podcast.
They just have a podcast and taters comes on and he just walks in the background and he's like,
Like a
well,
girl
he's going into
podcast?
the
Like some of those AI generated videos.
No, but
yeah, the AI generated video stuff is I get it.
but then
It's also why? But there's this weird future where we all go into a movie and I want to see it in film noir and you want to see it as cartoon. She wants to see it and we all get it rendered but the exact same film rendered differently in AI because it can't. I don't know if that's
But then I worked on something like the early
that's
video on demand.
yeah.
And it's the idea that
wait, it's a
there was this concept of you log in and then it would just work out what you want to watch. And freak people out. I don't like when
Yeah.
I want to choose, but I don't want to log in and be like, here's the thing you're gonna watch.
And like even like Netflix is like
Yeah.
gone away from their algorithm.
Yeah.
Even though that was like the sort of famous at the beginning, because they like crowdsourced the algorithm, and it's the content moves in and out of their state so fast that the algorithm is not accurate. Inaccurate. I don't know, I find that stuff to be like, whoa. But again, the speed of getting to this to an accurate scenario,
Yeah.
can you make more of them?
Yeah.
And then get your team to also render them and be like, well, what is the most reasonable idea or scenario or opportunity that we should be considering this outputs in? And I was even saying things like here, like this sort of shows some context. This one I thought was the most interesting because at least she's at her desk, at least she's in a space that could maybe then be rendered a little bit more outside that output to do that. So
Feels more.
It's okay.
and this was through ChatGPT, is that right?
Yeah.
Good. Helpful. Coming over here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a million miles away. What we did, I mean, all the help stuff was made up.
Yeah. And even how this lady is rendered a little bit isn't like terribly off from your original drawing. But and that's where a lot of these tools do struggle in stringing together the same, like I made Denise and I have this actress or whatever, this sort of visual of this person, and I need that person now to be in a park, or I need that person to be in a new office space. And it's like, I don't know how to do that yet, right? I can't like sort of apply, it'll like render a brand new person without the sort of descriptions of that. And that's where that makes them hard to do things like storyboards. Because you need the same actor in a different scene or the same sort
Well,
of.
I got around that because I said no, it's no individual person, is it? So, and so like when I used it,
Yeah.
that's how I got around that.
And it will be maybe closer to that, but that's where even just like a scenario based thing, just one unique moment, it gets a little bit closer because you can start to say like, hey, use this person, and that was even say like, oh, maybe you could use that same rendering and say like, take Denise from that photo and put them in a office space where they're stressed, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, I gave it closer to that. Is that clear? There's some over here that we're being rendered at the edge of our existence.
They want this one.
Oh, a weird cartoon. See, I'll make a cartoon for you. What's sort of funny is that like it's
Because I'm iterating on actually this one. I'm iterating on this. I'm trying to add a comment, make it more real, make it I don't know, like a movie and real actually people. He's still in this context of the cartoon. Because I'm not deleting the previous.
Oh yeah, deleting the previous.
Yeah, so generally I have like.
Is that what that was written to ChatGPT?
Those are.
Oh no,
no, I'm generating within
well, yeah, within Visual Actor.
generally he came up with this kind of hierarchies and arm, and below I just got more realistic look, but still it's not enough. So I should probably put more effort to prompt it more correctly, but I just
And it could be in the prompting.
Generally, to be honest, I was too lazy to change his interpretation of the drawing.
The drawing, yeah.
Above it. So above there is a few step, let's say, a story, but they're showing a running guy, and that he has this articulation on the right side.
Yes.
I copy this and paste it actually to
This scenario here.
No, I don't even paste this scenario. I paste on the scenario on the right.
Oh, the one on the right. Okay.
Oh,
The drawing.
this
Yeah.
drawing. And based on this drawing, actually, I get what's here.
Yeah, which is like utilizing a thing,
Yeah.
sort of. And again, this is where like your prompts and what you're trying to sort of visualize. Things like scenarios are quite helpful because you're trying to add context. Your persona sort of helps us add empathy. You can sort of render the world of that person maybe a little bit meaningfully, and then you add more like real world scenarios. Like, okay, like this is important for us to think about this person at their office desk or when they're running at a gym, right? Or where they are in the world. And it can be quite hard to do that, but the AI, because we can generate a world pretty quickly, By just saying like I can place my end user in New York City if I want, or I can like as long as you're describing it in your prompt and it's aligning to what your audience is sort of considering, that feedback loop starts to become a way to say, is this accurate? Is this what I want to solve for my end user? Like I had some needs and they were suffering from stress or they had a heart problem that they were sort of and that then put them in the gym in a different way or in a different scenario or a different habit, that sort of aligns to that idea. Does that make sense? And again, if it rendering this certain way and it's sort of refining it, sometimes you then have to go back and be like, I don't want that stick figure thing anymore. I want it to be rendered as a real person. Like you just have to sort of, and again, this is where ChatGPT these things become kind of hard, is that it is learning a little bit on itself and it's trying to refine your idea. And if it's not refining to the space you want, you need to abandon that and go start anew, right? Or I need to give it a different drawing, or I need to give it more context into the scenario. Like if it doesn't render what you want, don't just keep trying to refine that piece. Sometimes you have to start afresh or say like, what is the scenario that I'm trying to render in that opportunity? That is logical. And so with the last, whatever, 20 minutes, I'm just going to talk about my last pieces of slides, and then we can just have a short Q&A. So the benefits of doing this, I've sort of been talking about this as we go, right? Like one, it helps the teams that you're working with consider the environments and the scenarios at which they are designing for, right? And to do that at speed and pace allows your teams to sort of say, is this accurate? I started with a really quick pencil sketch of a woman with a cat, and then I got all of these other versions of that, and that is then helpful to say, is this whatever, Wendley or whatever her name is. Gets my point. Now, you can make a lot of this, right? Render 12, 15 images, produce a scenario as it is, and one of the things that you can continue to refine as a feedback loop is this adding the context I wanted to add? Am I able to align this to the narrative and story that's being built? And it can sort of become a place in public. It's not just an echo chamber. Like put it in Figjam, let your team sort of like comments about it. 6 of us or 8 of us all rendering Denise in a stressed out environment may be radically different or somewhat close. And the difference or the closeness actually might be relevant for how we all collectively think about that scenario or that individual user. Which is quite fun, and also just adds for an ability to say like, oh well, what did you do? Like there's so much sort of also learning and like, oh, that's a really cool one. What did you put in there that I didn't put in mine, right? And there are prompting strategies. Some people who do it a lot more find ways to do things like add the background, be very descriptive about who Denise as a like. They are 5'5" and they have brown curly hair and they are they have brown pants on. Like if you want that to be in the description, you add it. Another piece that's quite useful is that when we improve our use of generative AI and world building, we can ultimately help improve how human-centered some of the things we're trying to make. Speed is a catalyst in our world, but if we can sort of infuse empathy and design and human-centered qualities into even these fast renderings of who our audience is, that may then transfer into your engineers making personas with you, or your clients going like, oh yeah, this is exactly what we want. We want 12 other of these, or whatever that is, right? And especially as we sort of look at what is desirable to people, if that starts to infuse more accessibility outputs, humanizing our people and making the technology more feasible, that starts aligning to a lot more sort of opportunity generally for design. Again, as I was saying before, lean on it for its branching exploration. Yes, we made a persona. It sort of gave us a thing, and we had a scenario that we aligned to, but that scenario is just a starting place for considering multiple. If your scenario isn't accurate, you can go do another one, right? Like maybe and that's where stringing multiple scenarios together builds a whole view or picture around your opportunity, and it can be rendered in different ways. Does our client want to see a real person in Miami, or is it a cartoon that's going to sort of get the idea across? What is our team going to resonate to? Is it about sort of making it exactly like the world, or is it about sort of opening up and sort of rendering in its space? A cartoon where it's your crappy stick figure, but it's refined a little bit, may still lead down a narrative or a structure that isn't about jumping straight to a guy standing in front of a taco truck, right, or whatever. Now, the opportunity there as well is that AI and the generative tools we use speed up our ability to tell a story, but they also then translate into some things that can be a little more fun. And our teams that don't use those tools, you can say like, well, hey, I don't know, render your own world. Like, it's not only my place as a designer to sort of be the arbiter of what this world building is, but if you can sort of fold them into these things, like, great, like, tell me another scenario. What are the contexts at which we're trying to solve this problem? I've recommended even sometimes these things like user scenarios or outputs built into even things like user stories, like abandon the like my user needs to do X for Y. Yes, those things are helpful. You have those, and you like, and here is the user scenario context that like can be rendered into making that thing come alive or making that thing have a sort of opportunity or space to build that. And that's the last sort of bit of that. Any questions? We sort of talked about these things as we were going. And I blew through a break. So
Do
that's
you have any experience of doing this in corporate land where like access to these kind of tools is really restricted? Or so how?
Yeah, it's a
how do
great
you get
question.
around that kind of thing. There's not an answer to that, really.
As a consultant, I've found it easier because it's like, well, you don't let me use those tools, but I just use them with my team anyway. Like, you can slap my hand all you need, but like they all found it viable and useful. The fact that some of them are free access to pretty low barrier entry tools is quite helpful in that. But I mostly have used them inside of education spaces, workshops for teams that are trying to sort of do things in a time box way. Where you can typically get away with them in what I recommend in that space is the time boxing, right? Like an hour of building a scenario or 40 minutes of doing this. Like, this is not a huge waste of output of people's time. And especially if they're used early in the process, a lot of times when the problems have really been defined or people are sort of exploring a lot of things, even clients are more they're more apropos for saying, yeah, please come show us how to do, like, this is what we need to get our people to think about. And that may not implement, oh, now I have to look at what is the financial cost of Visual Electric for 12 heads for a year or whatever that is. But it's yeah. What I have generally found sort of fascinating about generative AI tools is they've abandoned the like students and educators who use it for free model. And they just have it like, we'll give you 5 tokens or whatever. And that
Do you think that's because that's their main market
I think
and it's not really big for anyone else?
I think it more has to do with most of them are VC driven. And most of them have to be able to show that they're making profit in a very short amount of time because of how quickly the world is moving. And you don't make money off of students and educators. But there is that model of that, which is like Adobe and Figma and all these other companies are sort of, they educated people and then they brought those tools to industry, and industry so it's like, oh great, we have to, like Apple is like, oh great, now we have to use Figma, and they're like, yeah, like you're not hiring anyone who knows how to use Sketch anymore or whatever. Which I feel bad for Sketch, but they also like dropped the ball. Let that happen to them versus any other things. Just like anything else, these tools, AI, hey, ChatGPT, you did a pretty good job. Like, they are seductive because they speed us up. We think that they're like as a quick response that you're choosing more than others. And so keep a healthy distance from it. Use them in time boxed ways, but also say like, well, like I wrote a scenario that was all mine and I owned it, and then I put it into ChatGPT and let it do it. Like, start at your rendering ability. don't allow it to steal your rendering ability from you, right? Like I'm gonna make something first and then I'm gonna plug it in there. But there's lots of people like, I don't know, just start prompting. We're like, no, no, no. Don't like, I need a woman. We're like, what's that? Like, no, like be descriptive because that's the way in which you can let the world render a thing that you need versus allowing the tools to make these massive leaps for you. And you like, it rendered a cat for me for some reason. Like, why would it do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what is sort of fascinating about this stuff and where they can be quite meaningful in extending is that same collaborative feedback loop of like, you're one designer on a team, if you render a scenario and then you have 4 other people render a similar scenario about Denise, now you have context. Hey, why did you think that was a better scenario? What now you could read through them and vote on them, you can put them in public spaces. Tools like Figjam, I think, are great for this kind of stuff. Like, cool, I like this. I think this one is the most accurate to your thing, right? Or whatever. And I can kind of, but I think this one is the one that we should use, or whatever, right? But if there's 5 other people doing it together and they all have a slightly different view of Denise's stress environment of what a meeting looks like, that actually raises the level of empathy among the team because you're considering a broader perspective of point of views and outputs. And then you can also then be like, I get your one, but I think this one is really the one that we should focus on. And that sort of brings the team together. And with clients in particular, they are the ones that sometimes don't know what direction to go. And you can bring them into some of the sausage making, but then also be like, is this sort of more accurate? And like, yeah, this is more fun. Or I helped choose that, and then when you were like, well, why did you choose this scenario? And you're like, we didn't. You did. You remember you helped us render the scenario through this prompting process and sort of folded you into an early idea, and then that baked its way through the entirety of the process. Yeah. So, any other questions? I mean, I don't want to keep us from drinking a beer, but having snacks outside, so the course does not. I don't need to beleaguer the last 10 minutes, but I appreciate everyone coming.
Yeah, it's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharing and